I hope your week's been going good. It's already Thursday, and today we're going to start our launch into looking at GIS data or spatial data, I guess, and how it relates to data science. For those of you who want it, I put this link into the chat, and some more people here again now. I'll put it here again. That link will take you to this current slide. If for some reason you can't get to that later this week, just take that #1 off. I probably should have done that because I'll probably be updating this for next week as well, and it might just take you to an index file instead. If we find a better place to put this and share it, we'll get that out to you as well. So how many of you have used GIS in the past? Go ahead and get a thumbs up here. Couple. Okay, good. So some of this might be reviewed today. We're kind of jamming into 90 minutes this morning and about 2 hours this afternoon, several weeks worth of training, just like we are in everything else in the DSPG program. GIS is kind of a unique topic. I've been told several times that if you could take on your 4-foot bookshelf and put everything there was to know into about a 1.5-inch volume book for the entire Microsoft Office suite. If you could fit everything into 1.5 inches, you would need the entire rest of the bookshelf just to put on there guidebooks for using GIS. It can be a very complex set of tools. Because there's so many different things you can do with it, and there's so many sub-disciplines within GIS that people are involved with. It could be things from doing just basic thematic mapping, which we're going to be doing today, to doing network analysis, where we're looking at transportation networks, to doing making networks and spatial mappings of things that aren't actually physical space. So wide variety of things you can do. Going here. All right, so today's agenda is we have, first thing we're gonna have to do is look at the software and get the environment set up. It takes a little bit of time for Ravana possibly to boost up all these numbers of QGIS. So I'll mess around with that. We'll take you through the interface. We'll do some attribute mapping and make a thematic map. I got the vacation states from about 24 of you yesterday or last night, so I got those mapped in. We'll do some symbolization, and we'll do some queries and exporting, and then we'll take a lunch break. And then this afternoon, we're going to do, I think, some more fun things. We'll show you how real quick to put some labels on a map, edit our tables that we have. We're going to access some census data and do a little mapping with that. I also have some crashed data from the state of Iowa. We're going to do some spatial joining, and so you can learn a technique of how to bring in data. That's the main goal today, is to show you how to bring data into the GIS software. And then we'll just touch briefly on some geoprocessing. Tomorrow and Monday, Aaron will be teaching more and continuing on looking at geospatial data, but he'll be working primarily with using R and how you can do some spatial items within R. The idea is you can go back and forth between the two. Sometimes QGIS could be a really good helping tool to help you get the geometry the way you want it and a few data sets set up, export the data out in the format you need it, and then go ahead and continue using R but being able to use the spatial data that you've just formatted. And then I'll come back next week on Tuesday, and we'll do several other little mapping problems, and I'll show you other things we can do. We'll also be doing OpenStreetMap at that time, so I can show you how we can incorporate OpenStreetMap into your mapping toolkit. All right, so the first thing I need people to do is go ahead and go get into Ravana, and one of the things we need to do right away is we have to go and map out or update your repo so we can use the files that you need today. So if you get in Ravana and then you go into your File Explorer, and if I get going too fast here, please just put a note in the chat. I do have that up so I can see that. And we're going to use the File Explorer for two different things. And I think this is the first time you guys have really done stuff outside of just going directly into RStudio using Rivanna. Is that right? It is. So we and for us when you're using QGIS within Rivanna, because you can copy and paste text files into here that might have your geospatial data in it, or you can also add data by uploading it into the system that you're working on. So when you hear what you're going to need to do is we're going to look at your home directory and go into the Git subdirectory. And when we get into the Git subdirectory, you're going to keep working your way down into the Git training data in QGIS location. And you might find that you don't have that location. There's a good chance you won't, and that's because we just added some files there yesterday and this morning. And so what we're going to need to do is you're going to have to do a pull request from the repo. But first, make sure you get into the Git directory at least to see what you have. And then once you're in that directory, on the top of the page, there's a button for opening in terminal. You can go ahead and click it to open in terminal. And I'm pretty sure everybody's going to need to do this part because some files were added there in the last hour. But you open up in terminal, and the commands that you can type to check and see what you have going on, and I'll leave this screen up for a couple minutes here, is you can do a git remote -v, and that should check to see that your repo is there and matches. So you should get what I have here in the second and third line. And once you have that, if you would hit a type of git pull, and that should start to update your repo. When you have that done, if you can go ahead and give me a thumbs up, I'll start to see where we're at with people getting that in place. If you're having problems, well, you won't have a CS. Yours probably starts with a different name than a CS7RW. Yours probably has your own. Where's the terminal to type in the git commands? Okay, so when you're in Rivanna, you can tell you want to go to the File Explorer. So I'll do the same here. I'm in. Get the right screen. When I was in my interactive sessions for setting things up, okay, you go over to Files and open your home directory. And when you open that home directory, it'll take you into something like this, and you can expand the tree on the left. Okay, and then you can see the open terminal window here, and that's what should bring us back to, on the right slides here, should bring us back to, sorry. Here we go. That'll bring us back to the ability to go and type in this git remote v. Okay, so just checking to see. Yeah, the path will have your computing ID instead of mine. So everybody have their own path name here, but then you'll have a git. You don't see that when you're looking on the left side of the menu. It just puts it up here when it traces back your root location. All right, so where do we find the path? There you go. And there's an answer for you. Okay, so what do you do after you get the git pull? Kent, after we do a git pull, you should, we haven't gotten to that step yet, but you should see that everything is updated. So if you haven't already up to date, you're good. If you don't, it's probably loading in those files right now. Just checking to see how we are with groups getting getting their repo updated. Not seeing very many hands yet. Do I need to wait here, or are we ready to move on? Okay, please. Okay, so yeah, I'll explain it again.
Oh, please, sir. Please, sir. We are still like a little behind.
Yep.
We need a couple of minutes.
Okay. So I'm gonna take you through it again, because this is gonna be important for us to have, because you need the data for us to do this today. Tell you what, let me do two things here, because I know that it takes a few minutes for QGIS to start up when we're all trying to hit it at once. I want to kind of get that staggered out a bit. So I will come back to this in just a minute if you didn't get this, but I want to jump just a slide or two ahead here real quick and then come back. Just like you were starting RStudio, you can go over and you can start up QGIS. And when you pick QGIS, the options that you should put in, I have 2 cores listed. You can put just one core in. Let's see. Yeah, you can go to the next session. But you could put in just one core. I did find out when I was working last night that the GPU card started up just fine. However, this morning when I tried to do it and I told it I want 4 or 5 hours of time, it tended to take quite a bit of time to try and start it up. So if you want, you can reduce the number of cores down to 1, set the GPU to default, and then hit launch. And after you do that, get to this screen, and then you can wait on that when you have that all running. So while you're doing that, or for those of you that had their stuff set up, I'm gonna jump back here for those that were working on getting started. So setting up the environment, back at the front screen for Ravana, if you click on the Files menu, it goes on that front screen. It'll take you to your File Explorer or your home directory. And in your home directory, you'll have an R and a Git. And if you have an R and a Git command, then you can double check, go into the Git directory and find your training. And so I've gone into my Git directory, gone into training, data, and QGIS. And this is what I currently have. If you don't have, you have the training, but not the data, then for sure we have to go and do a pull request. Mary mentioned some people don't have, they need to do a git clone, the training repo. And I think, I believe this is the text you'd have to type. And if someone else that's on here can correct me if I'm wrong, put it in the chat. Okay, this is a little bit of a tricky spot, so go ahead and keep putting questions in there. Yes, you can do that in the terminal. Okay, there's the better one, git clone and the address for it. Good, Grant's got it up. We're ready to roll then. Because my only worries was if Grant would have it done. He's got it. Means you can help everybody else, Grant. See who else we got going here. So, any else got any questions, problems? I don't want you to go too far ahead here because you're gonna need to have this data. Anybody else? Don't be shy if you're having problems. That's fine. I'll admit I had to ask Aaron a couple questions yesterday. If you just cloned it, you shouldn't have to do a poll, correct? Should be under a training, not a test DSPG. Don't have a training. Okay, so several people are saying they don't have a training directory at all. Okay, if there's no GIS folder in the training, that's where you need to do a pull request to update it.
My Git remote V does not work. Why does that happen? Any ideas? The first line of code for the terminal git remote /v.
Okay. One thing I did when I had that problem is in the file Explorer, I first went and double clicked on the Git, opened it up. And then if I had training, I went into it. I did that just to see what was there. And then I went back to terminal and it worked just fine.
Okay.
Okay, good. That worked for Adam. I'm not sure why that is for sure. You just cloned and pulled, but don't see a GIS folder. Where? You do have a training folder? I think once you're in that Git directory, it should be able to just do the pull. You shouldn't have to put the directory back in. If you're able to check to do a git remote V and it gives you this output that I have here for the origin, then you should be okay. All right, there's a lot of chats here, so I'm trying to catch up to all of them. Yeah, the git remote V will only work if you are in the directory. So you had to go into the directory first and then hit terminal. Doesn't have a .git at the end. Okay, so it doesn't have this part of it. That might be okay. Maybe they're just a different setting of it, but you've still got the training, and in the file Explorer, you're able to go back down into training, see data, And then in the data, go in and see these 3 directories. So Katie Thompson, if you have data but no QGIS, you're going to be one of the ones that needs to do the pull request. And so that pull request okay. So we still have some people that don't have a training folder. You can see the training folder is the same data that you've been using with the RStudio stuff earlier in the week.
It might be useful just to show how to open the terminal from your home directory Git. You can just click there in open terminal, and that will set your working directory as in your home directory in Git. And there you can run the Git clone. After you have run the Git clone, then you can cd or use the file explorer to go into the training directory.
So you have them here. Is it easier? Should we switch back to your screen if you want to show them that real quick?
Sure.
Why don't we do that real quick? Then you can show them, take them through the process. You've done this way more than I have. So I'll stop my share.
Let's see, can everyone see my screen right now? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, so as we mentioned, we can go to the file explorer, then go to the home directory. And here this representation of everything that's in my home directory. Most of you have already created a file or a directory here called Git. Here I'm just going to create a new one called Git2, just to show how you can create that directory. After I have created that, I can just double click that, and that will navigate to that directory. Once I'm here, I don't have the training repository. So I can click on opening terminal. And that will give me a shell access here. So if I do pwd, this is the working directory. This is where I am right now. And I'm going to be using git clone. And I will pass the directory from the URL that I put in the chat. So I'm just copying that here. So it's git clone and then the repository. And I'm doing that from the Git folder. And that's copying everything. Let's take a few seconds.
So yeah, so everybody should be able to do that if they don't have it set up otherwise. They should be able to just do this by making a new directory.
Yeah, and most of you should already have it. See, and here I'm just showing the files that I have, and I see that I have the new directory here. So I can just exit, and I will go back to the file explorer. Here I know that I can just refresh, and I will see the training. This is the repository. So I can just go there. And now if I wanted to, let's say that I already had the training directory, I can as well just go to opening terminal. And instead of doing a git clone, I can just do a git pull. I will make sure that I have the latest version, and that should be everything that you need to do. Okay.
All right, great. See,
chart. Now.
Super easy, right? Once you know how to do it. Okay. Share my screen here again. Of course, alternatively, you could run QGIS outside of this platform and get the data out of the GIT as well, but we'll keep moving forward here. All right, so we're okay to move ahead here a little ways. Okay, let me get my chat back here. Okay, so like I said, then what you need to do is need to launch QGIS. And so we just went and launched QGIS, just like we did our studio, but you can tell it 4 hours if you want to keep it running, or 2 hours, and then come back and do it again. Number of cores, 1 or 2, go ahead and stick with 1. You can set default, or the NVIDIA V100 has worked for me quite well. And then go ahead and launch it. And let it sit and do this in your open window, and we'll come back and turn it on momentarily in case we have to wait for some people to get caught up on that. All right, so now we can, if you still have questions on setup, go ahead and put them in chat. Maybe someone can help you on there. I expected some of that would happen, so I got some other lecture material here to go over first before we have to get into the actual content for the GIS. So go ahead and keep posting questions there, and hopefully someone can respond to you as we're working through this. So when working with the GIS, one of the things you need to know about is there's several different types of data that we can work with in GIS. Unlike working with tabular data where you have Excel files or you have CSV files, they're pretty much kind of the same thing, or can become the same thing. In GIS, we have different types of data types for the different type of data that we want to represent. So for example, we have point data, we have line data, and polygon data. All three of those are considered to be what they call vector data. They're the lines on the map. You can see I have a sketch here, shows those 3, point, line, and polygon. Any ideas? You guys go ahead and have you put in the chat, or just go ahead and speak your ideas. But what might we use a point to map? What types of things might we map with a point? Single locations, coordinates, people. I love it. Yeah, mapping people. What's interesting, so you mentioned mapping people. A point can map one location that person is. But once that person starts to move, if we start like in a GPS, let's say you're locating where they're going and the route they take, then we've transferred from a point into a line. And because a line is really just a series of points, but they're formatted in a way that they're kept together. In a point, let's say the point represents a person. So they'll say the attribute is Chuck. That's the name of the person that's there. And then Chuck walks down the sidewalk. That becomes a line, but it's still Chuck's line. It's one entity. And then he actually walks a whole circle around the block back to where he started and closes his path. That's when it becomes a polygon, but it's still Chuck's route. Okay, it's always been about Chuck in these things, and it still has one attribute assigned to it, but it's a different shape of a geometry. So yes, lots of good ideas are buildings. Buildings are neat because they can be points or they can be polygons. Okay, so some good things. Raster data is another type of data that's commonly used. With raster data, just think pixels like they are in a picture. And so an aerial image is actually a raster image. So we have all three here. We have 3 vectors and a raster image in this graphic that's here. Then we have LiDAR data and TIN data, and we'll look at that in a moment. I do provide 3 links here if you want to know more about the different data types. Knowing about the different data types, as you keep working with GIS, eventually you won't even think much about it, but when you're just starting out, it sometimes is important to spend a little extra time thinking about what you can and can't map with these different data types, because sometimes you can map the wrong things. And it works until you start to get some analysis and you realize, oh, I really should have broke that apart, and these lines really should have been multiple points, or my polygons really aren't polygons, they're really line boundaries, okay? And so you'll see stuff like that happen. Here's an example of raster data. So this is aerial imagery of the state of Iowa, and there are lots of, it looks blocky here because that's just the areas that were flowing at a time, and they get patchwork together. So this is done over many days to get a cloud-free version of this. Now, I actually have this also displayed, this aerial map of Iowa with weather radar returns on here. And so the weather radar returns, you can see they're also quite blocky. And so one of the things about raster graphics is they tend to be a bit coarser in scale, whereas a point data, a vector data, I can, depending on how many decimals I use in the location, I can pretty much locate something down to, you know, millimeters or less. You know, it just depends on how many decimals you need in the latitude, longitude that you provide for that location. To do that with raster data would be a lot of square cells of raster data. So typically raster data is 2 foot, might be as small as you get down to a 2 by 2 foot area for a large area. I mean, across the state of Iowa, imagery. Inside of an urban area, you must centimeter photography, but you only covered that city's area. I mentioned LiDAR data. LiDAR data is pretty much like a point cloud. If you've heard of a point cloud for 3D mapping, it's X, Y, and Z points. And it uses radar, light radar, bouncing back and forth from an airplane to the ground or to the surface and measuring the reflection at the time. And from that, it calculates elevations. If you take all those elevations together, you can stitch them together and the GIS can create a terrain model for you, like you see here. And then it can also output this out and convert it into a raster graphic for visualization. But underneath this, there are lots of little points, billions and billions of points across your area that help give you the elevations that you can use. The TIN data, I didn't put that in here, but the TIN is a triangular irregular network, and it's really good for 3D objects as well. So then the other thing, when we're working with these different data types, you have different file formats that you can save stuff into. And when we're working with R later, you'll be able to work with some of these as well. So this isn't just a QGIS thing. This works with multiple GIS systems. But the first one is a shapefile and has an extension of .shp. I'll come back to that one in a moment. GeoJSON, I like to use quite a bit. We'll use some of that today. You could take a look at that, but it's a flavor of JSON data that just includes a standard for how you encode the geographic coordinates and the attributes within it. GeoTIFF file, and there's other types of geo raster graphics, but a GeoTIFF file is your regular TIFF graphic file format, but in the header of the file, it includes a little bit of code that tells you the latitude and longitude of, I think it's either it's of 2 corners of the image typically, and it tells you what the resolution or how many meters wide each cell is. And with that information, you can properly place a GeoTIFF image into other geospatial software, and it will locate correctly on the map. But it's embedded inside of the GeoTIFF. So when you look at a file on your computer, you wouldn't know that it's a GeoTIFF unless you opened it up in special software and it told you that it was. The Geo package is becoming increasingly popular. It's open source. It combines a bunch of files together. It is an alternative to some other software formats that ESRI uses, but the Geo package is more in the open source world. Just know that it exists and that it's increasingly becoming utilized, but it takes a little bit to wrap your head around when you first start using it. So we will not be using the Geo package today. A CSV file, everybody's familiar with the CSV file. I'm interested in CSV files that contain one of two things, either latitude, longitude, or some other geographic XY data, or a CSV file that contains, let's say, a locator ID or a reference ID that I can reference it back to geospatial data. Or if you even give me a CSV file that has a state name or a county name in it, or a FIPS code, I can join it back into geographic data. So that becomes, it's more of a, CSV data can often be extra tabular data that you can join in. You guys know what KML or KMZ is? Anybody have a guess? Go ahead and put it in the chat if you have a guess what a KML or KMZ file is. Good question, Sarah. Sarah just asked me, what about address data? Address data is only good if you actually have a back-end piece that helps you understand where the geographic location of that address is. And I'll tell you more about that in a moment. So I'll tell you real quick, KML, KMZ data that's what was used by Google Earth. Remember that Google Earth was, yep, it's related to XML. It uses that format, but it was the format that was used by Google Earth. The reason I include it on here is there are a lot of websites where you might want to get data, and they provide it to you as a KML or a KMZ. It is an XML file of your data. Purist might. XML is kind of like a GeoJSON file in a way. I mean, it's just a text file. You can read it, even read it, but GeoJSON is way better than what the KML is. The KMZ file, if you run into one of those, it's a zipped version of a KML file, and maybe some pictures that are linked to it or some other stuff linked to it. If you actually change the .kmz on a file to .zip, you could then unzip it, and you would open up a directory that would contain a KML and other files. So just beware of that. And then the geodatabase, there's many flavors of geodatabases. These can be quite robust, and they're commonly used in ESRI's products. Now back to the question I had, someone sent me here about an address. With an address, you have to have a reference system for it to mean anything. One of my students from Ghana this last year did a project working with a referencing system for addresses in that community, in one of his communities that he worked with. They had 3 different addressing systems. So depending upon where you went to look up that address, you might get a different answer, or vice versa. So we really take for granted what we have in the United States, parts of Europe, for a standardized system of addressing. And not every place has that. Some places do have multiple systems. You can't just go to Google and type in an address and get it. But what you do is there's something called geocoding, and that's when you put an address in. It looks at that address in the database, does some mathematical things if it has to, and it will approximate, come back and tell you where that latitude longitude is. Okay, so the address is good, but a latitude longitude is better. Okay, I mentioned shapefiles. Shapefiles, because we work with them quite a bit, it's important for you to understand that a shape file is actually files. And what you see here is the type of shape files we'll be working with today. What I've highlighted in green are the 4 main files that you need. Sometimes you only have 3 files. Someone gives you a shape file, they'll give you 3 of them. There'll be a SHP, a .dbf, and a .shx. Okay, I'll talk about those each in a moment, but if someone sends you only one of those 3, contact them right away, because you don't have enough of the file in order to do anything with it. You've got to have all 3. You notice that they're named exactly the same. They just have a different extension on them. And then there's this .prj. What they each mean is the shape. It contains our coordinates that we have for drawing the information on the map. So that's our basic shapes. The .shx is an index file, and that helps the GIS software find the features more quickly within the shape file. So it's just an index to it. And usually it's the smaller of the 3 files. The .dbf is it's your Excel file or your CSV. I mean, it's a tabular file that has it's a flat file, and it has your attributes in it. There's no geospatial data that is currently being used to actually draw the object on the screen or on the map. Yes, there might be a column or two columns that have latitude and longitude, but they're there as attributes and reference information. The actual coordinates are contained in the shapefile. They're actually being used to draw it. So it's just a repetition of what's there. You can have a DBF file that doesn't have latitude, longitude listed in it and just maybe has the name of the county and the total population. That's all it's got in it. And that could be there. The fourth one, though, I do consider required, even though it's not, and that's the .prj file. It's a projection file. Without it, the data that's in the shape file is just numbers. And you gotta know where those numbers go on the Earth. We have so many different reference systems that if you have a projection file to tell you which reference system those coordinates are based off of, you very easily could have your map drawn in the wrong spot in your software. A lot of software has improved greatly in the last 5 years to be able to make best guess on it. Does a really good job based upon their data project you're working with. But when you're starting off the new project and it doesn't know, it's got nothing to reference it on. So it's truly guessing. Here's an example of projections. And with this, we have two map projections. On the top, we have what's called the web, and underneath it, we have UTM map. Now, which one of these two do you guys think you're most likely to run into almost every day? So, okay, and I got no here. So I know Jesse's from Iowa State, Grant's from Iowa State. Yeah, you're probably likely to run into UTM or NAD 83, UTM 15 North quite a bit. That's a UTM coordinate system that has its bottom 0, 0 for the XY location, located, I believe, northeast corner of Kansas. The 0, 0 starts there as a grid, and it works its way out and covers almost all of Iowa. Top of the left corner of Iowa does not quite get covered. It becomes a negative. It's on the left side of the 0, 0. But what they did is this UTM coordinate is a whole series of rectangular grids placed on the surface of the globe, and within that grid area, they do their mapping with a reference at some location where their 0, 0 datum is at. So every place in Iowa or in the United States has its own different type of UTM, and just Iowa's UTM zone 15 north. The one that you guys are likely to see quite a bit is going to be something like this Web Mercator auxiliary sphere, the one on top, because it's commonly used in mapping systems on the web, such as Google Maps, Leaflet Maps, OpenStreetMap. Several of these places use that type of map. It's a Mercator map, and we'll look here what Mercator maps are. These are the ones that have had lots of press over the last decade because they distort things quite a bit. And so in this example, this Mercator map, let's take a look at Greenland. I've never been to Greenland, but I'm pretty sure that it's probably not that big. And this is a commonly used map that it exaggerates locations as you get closer to the poles, all right? Visually, it's a neat looking map because the way it doesn't flatten stuff for lines, and it does retain some of that. But for a globe standpoint, it misrepresents the area of places. And again, there's an article here if you want to read more about it. But to this point, I think I have them in here. There's some articles I have. Let's see where I jumped in ahead. Yeah, I took them out. I'll put them back in here, but I have one that shows all of the countries fitting into Africa. Maybe I put it as a link here. I know I moved it. So I will add that slide back in. But many of the countries would actually fit into the shape of Africa. All right, any questions at the moment? And I'll get that graphic back in for after lunch so you can see it. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump over into geojson.io and do the experimenting there with some stuff. And I can talk about attributes and help explain how some of these things work. And then we'll come over to QGIS, and then we'll have a break, I guess. So go to geojson.io. And in there, again, I have, I drew up some of the shapes I showed you earlier are actually drawn in geojson.io. But let me go ahead and pull up mine. And I'm gonna go, this is the one I made earlier, and you can see the shapes are on here. One thing I wanna tell you before I can get rid of this data, this is one of those spots to be careful of. Note my format for my latitude, longitude, okay? It's a longitude is first and then latitude. You guys are gonna work with Leaflet next week with Aaron. Leaflet reverses these in some cases. Make sure you always know how your software treats X and Y, because sometimes it's YX, sometimes it's XY. And it just has to do with the different philosophy on how data should be represented. But very, very important. Where this could be a problem if you're working with Leaflet in the future. I teach a class that teaches how to program in Leaflet. But where students run into trouble is they find examples of code that they want to use, and that example is from Australia, let's say. Well, they start to forget about what is a positive and a negative number in the geographic coordinate system, and they think about what their numbers are in Iowa, and nothing works. Their points don't show up. Well, first, it's because they forgot Southern Hemisphere versus Northern Hemisphere, and second, it's because the coordinate order gets swapped in Leaflet from how it is in GeoJSON type data. So just be aware of that. I do not remember how R does it. I think it depends on what package in R that you're using with it. So with that said, hopefully everybody's in geojson.io. I'm gonna go over to new and make a new one here. If you haven't logged in, you sure can, you don't have to, but it is really nice that it does work with your GitHub account for being able to do stuff and save things and load things from there. But I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in here. And you guys did some of this for me if you were doing the pre-class work. But I want to go ahead and add a point. So take my marker, I'll put a point here in Iowa. And when we do that, you can see it puts my code over on the right. And all I want to do is I want to add some additional attributes to this. So again, we have a location, but we don't have any additional information. So we're going to click on this point. When you click on the point, a window will pop up, and we can tell it if we want to show style properties or not. Okay, I'm going to turn those off for the moment. I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to type the word city. And let's say I'm going to call this Boone, Iowa. Hit save, and you can see what it does for me. This is kind of a quirky thing in GeoJSON, which can be good depending upon what you're looking for. It does add those properties for the marker, size, symbol, but it also added, more importantly for me, it added my attribute for the city into here. So let me zoom in here now. I don't know if I got quite in the right spot. I was guessing. That was pretty close. I want to edit it. You can edit a point, and you can drag it, and you can locate it. And then once you've done that, you can hit save. The reason I show you how to do some of the stuff in GeoJSON is because it's become my new quick way to go and create a map. If I need a map that I want to do something with, that I want to take over into QGIS or into R, and I need some simple points put together, I have a visual interface in this tool that I can use. I got map references. I can digitize super easy. And this is what they call digitizing, adding points on a map. I can switch to my satellite view. All right, so here I can, maybe I need to point or locate this a little closer and bring it back in here. Save it. Maybe you're drawing the location of a park in the community. Yep, I'm gonna do edit again, Laura. I'll do edit again, but I'll do it with a polygon, not a line here in a moment. I do want to. Okay, I'll change this. Okay, I add the name of city. I'm gonna tell it to show the properties, and instead of including the state, I'm gonna edit that off. So it's Boone. Now I'll add a state. And then up in these markers, I can change the marker color in here too. You have to have your other software on the other end has to have a way to use that information, but it gets stored here, the marker color, marker size. Let's see what happens. Now I have a smaller version and it's blue. Okay, so that's one thing you can add. Let's go ahead and add a point. And this is one thing that makes a GeoJSON file pretty cool. Actually, before I add my line, let me just add one more point up here. Okay. When I add this extra point, you can see it just this bit of code right here. So from this curly brace to this curly brace is one feature. Here's my second one right here. It just puts a comma between them. So each of those becomes a new feature as I'm drawing stuff on the map. A lot of times in a shape, like in a shape file, when you have a GIS shape file, the shape file can only be a point shape, line shape, or a polygon shape. The GeoJSON can actually contain multiple feature types in one GeoJSON. So we're going to add another line. I'm just going to add a line down through here. And it's hard to see, so we can go and we can also click on it. We can do it there. There I got. And I'm going to change its thickness. We'll make this thing big. And we can change its color. Okay, but bottom line, we have a line added on our map, and if we zoom down and look at the line feature, so these top features first, now it's a feature collection because it's a collection of multiple feature types. It told me this type was a point, this one was a point. Scroll down here, my next one is right here. So this starts my next one here. This one is a line string. So hopefully everybody can see that is on there. And then below it is all the pairs of coordinates for each of the vertices. If I draw a polygon or a rectangle, it's the same thing. I'll just do a rectangle. And double click it. I change its stroke and stroke width or its opacity if I want. I'm going to change its fill. That, and we'll make it fairly dark. So here's my rectangle. I'll scroll down here. And even though I do it as a rectangle, that's just a drawing feature in GeoJSON. It's a polygon as far as it's concerned. So here's that polygon. How did I change satellite view? Bottom left corner, it says Mapbox, Satellite, or OSM. Okay. As a teaser for next week, if you guys have ever wondered how, I'm sliding over here to the neighboring town. If you've ever wondered how why some cities in OSM have this much data, where we actually have buildings with numbers on them, we have sidewalks mapped, we would have some of the trees located. That's because volunteers have gone into OpenStreetMap and digitized that data. And we're going to do some of that next week. And then when that data is in there, you actually have the ability to pull that data back out into your GIS. But we've been doing some work over in Ogden there. Okay, any questions about video digitize? So once you've digitized this data, you might want to get this out of here and use it somewhere. And one nice thing about the JSON data is you can just select all and copy it. And you could do that and then go paste it into an empty text file if you wanted to. That works really well. And there's no hassle with that rest of the interface if you do it that way. You can also go over though and do a save. And if you save it, you have choices to save it directly to your GitHub account if you've linked into that. That has an advantage to it as well. As a just file or as a GeoJSON or TopoJSON. TopoJSON is just a slightly different syntax. Well, it's substantially different, but it is a little bit cleaner. And TopoJSON, if you work with D3, it's another data visualization tool. It's a JavaScript-based tool, but it's called D3. They use TopoJSON because it's the syntax they like to work with for bringing data into those data visualizations. So nice thing about, again, this free tool is you can actually convert. You can have a GeoJSON file, bring it in here, paste the code on the right, go to a save, and you can save it as a TopoJSON or as a CSV, KML. WKT is called well-known text. I've probably used it once, but you might find applications where you use it all the time. And then the last one is a shapefile. And if you save this as a shapefile, it will download the files I told you about earlier, but it will put those into a zip directory, and then you can unzip it and get to it. So that's how you can save the file that you're working on in here. Click this table icon. Table's kind of neat because it shows you some of your fields. Okay. Now this doesn't work as well when you have multiple features. So let me go file new once and show you this. Let me just add a couple of points. And let me add one more point. Okay, so I have this different data that's been added. If I go to table, now I can see the same attributes as a table. The one reason I like this, if you're working with GeoJSON files, is it's really easy to come in here and you can rename a field. So instead of marker size, I'm gonna call it M size. And change it to M size for me. If I go back to my GeoJSON look now, it's called M size over here. You could have done a find and replace to do that, but this is a nice little tool that you can do inside the table. And you can also delete a field. Maybe you decide your GeoJSON file is getting kind of large and you don't need to save what the icon size is. You can go and you can delete a column. I'm going to delete this one as well. And that one, because all I really care about is this field. And I look back at my GeoJSON now, my GeoJSON properties are much smaller. I got rid of all the extra stuff that was in there. Okay, any questions? It's 11 o'clock. Okay, well, let me switch back over here then to our slides. One thing I mentioned that makes GitHub kind of cool. If you save a GeoJSON file inside of GitHub, and then you go and you look at that file, you will see that it will actually draw it for you. It will give you a preview of that file. And in my past work that I've done, when I have a GeoJSON file in GitHub that has just points, let's say, that have attributes to them, I can actually click on the point and the little window will pop up with the attributes for me as well. So they have a nice viewer built into GitHub that supports GeoJSON file formats. I'm not sure what other formats they might do something like that with, but this is the one I see the most often. Just know when you get there, again, if you're going to go to someone's, maybe someone's GitHub site is hosting a GeoJSON map that you would like to use in your project, and you go into their repository, something like this, and you say, okay, yeah, I want that, but it just shows me the map. How do I get it? You just have to click on raw, and you click on the raw button, it'll show all the text code for the GeoJSON, and you can just copy it and paste it into your own text file, or you can download it as a text file. You can save GeoJSON files with a .json or a .geo as the full word GeoJSON, like I have here. Excuse me. My preference is to do it this way because then I know which way it is. Because when I do coding and other writing, sometimes I will have JSON data that contains geospatial information like latitude, longitude. And that's just the way it's formatted as opposed to being formatted as a CSV. But if it's actually in the structure of a GeoJSON, then I make sure I put GeoJSON on the end name of it. That way it avoids a lot of confusion. And having the two different types could be the same project, same data, but the syntax is being different enough. The way I approach my code to interpret it is going to be different. All right, finally, QGIS. So if we can, we're going to go over and fire up your QGIS here in just a second, but I'll talk about this interface for QGIS. There are a lot of buttons, and we're only showing the basic set of buttons. But the things you need to know about are in the middle here is where your map's going to be. That's your canvas. Over on the left, we've got this browser that lets us browse to files. We're going to work with the favorites in a moment and add a link to your directory. And then down the bottom here are your layers. Your layers, you can turn them on and off, check mark. And you can also click on one layer and drag it up or drag it down to place the layer over top on another layer. What you can do is you'll be able to change the colors of the layers, work on that. That's called symbology. We've got a bunch of different ways to pan, move around the map with our data, or on the canvas right here. Over on the right here, we got several tools that can be used to help us select, query data. Any one of these icons you see that has a little bit of a yellow splotch to it on the top row here means it's having to do with a selection. Okay, so the yellow is the selection color, and if the tool you see has like this is a yellow on it, it means it's going to work with only the one that's selected. This drop down here lets us actually make selections. This one zooms the selection. This one finds within a selection. Okay. On the imports, I mentioned this was this screen right here. Blew it up. We're not working with very many data types in this class, but I want you to know that QGIS is quite robust in that it can bring in a lot of different file formats or from file sources. We can connect to PostGIS. We can connect to MS SQL, bring spatial light data in. We can bring in WFS, OWS, ArcGIS map server, and feature servers. Okay, so there's other types of GIS software out there this tool will interface with. As I mentioned, QGIS is open source, has a lot of contributors. I mentioned this in the pre-course materials. It's being updated about every 30 to 40 days with a point update, but I'm not sure how many we're seeing, at least 2, maybe up to 4 significant releases a year. The current one is 3.14. It's known as the Pi release. It wasn't that long ago. We're just sitting here at 3.4. That was their big stable release when they completely rewrote this software. And the amount of people contributing to it has just exploded. So we're seeing a lot more stuff being added to it. And for a free tool, it's quite amazing. So what we need to do, if everybody can open up their launch, go ahead and launch your QGIS. You're going to end up with a screen that's kind of like mine that I have here. Let me know if you guys, go ahead, everybody do that, and then put some chat in the window. Helps me know that you're still there. And let me know that you can get your QGIS window started. And I'm going to remove my favorite because I'm going to show you how to add that. Great, you guys keep doing that, and I'm going to get my notes updated here. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is It doesn't look like mine, but as long as you can see the QGIS window is up, we should be okay. Because yours is going to get modified a little bit over time too. Brian, still loading the app instance. How long? If it's been trying to load for a while, cancel it and try and load it again. And maybe tell it you just want 1 hour. And make sure you set the video card GPU to set the video GPU to be default. Black screen with little gray icons to the left. Huh. I wonder if those little gray icons are part of
Here
this.
they are. Yeah, but I don't have the main, I don't have the white, all this white stuff. Project, untitled project.
Let's launch the instance again and see what it does. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go forward here a little bit, and then if we still have most of this, but keep trying to work to get people logged in. For those of you that went back and tried to restart the instance of it with those settings, is it reloading? All right, well, I'll come back. I'm going to show you two things here. They're minor things that you can come back and do quite easily. The first one, and I recognize this is small on my screen. There's really no way to make this bigger. What I want to do is where it says favorites on your left, and everybody should at least have a browser window that says favorites. Instead of us having to constantly go through a long file path to get into our files, I'm gonna have you right click and go to add a directory, and you can navigate through your account. Okay, so here's my account name. I'm going to my Git, whatever directory you put your training into. My training, it's in data, and it says QGIS. Hit choose, and it will add that directory of the data we'll be using. If you right click on it, you can tell it to rename it. This is your favorite. I'm just call it DSPG and hit OK. So we just renamed our data set. If you're excuse me, if you're still having trouble getting it, your instance loading, make sure you put notes for everybody to see in the Zoom chat, because then there's some other people online that I think can be responding and watching as well, and put notes in there. I see a few of them are coming up, so that's good. So the browser window on the left you don't have. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so if you don't have a browser panel like I do right here on the left, if you go on the toolbar pretty much anywhere and you right click, it should pop up a button that says panels and toolbars, or it's a list, and you can check and uncheck the browser panel. So I'll uncheck mine, and mine just went away. If I right click and I go to browser panel, it comes back. Okay, I saw a hand came up. I wasn't sure if there was a question or not. Okay, after you click the favorites, yep, I'll show you one more time because this you're gonna want to have it set this way. After you right click on favorites, favorites, I'm just gonna redo mine because it's just easier to do it that way. Right click favorites, add directory. It should show you on the left side, look in, you should be able to find, it's your University of Virginia account name in your home directory. You click that, and then wherever you just cloned the training into, we go into Git. And when you're in Git, mine was in training. Once in training, I went to data. Find QGIS. You don't need to go into the QGIS directory. Just click the QGIS directory and select choose. And it's going to put this long name here. You can right click on that name and tell it you want to rename your favorite. And I just called mine DSPG just because I wanted to be able to keep it short. Did that help? Great, good, okay. So that was the first step. Second step is you probably don't have a processing toolbar displayed. And I wanna show you how you turn that on. Plugins menu. And when you go to plugins menu, tell it you want to manage and install plugins. And it'll take a couple seconds to load. That's fine. Make sure everybody can do that. So I went to the plugins menu and came down to manage plugins. I get this dialog that you see right here. Mine started with the word installed. Yours might start with all selected. And that's fine. It's taking a while to draw. But what you want to do is you want to turn on two of them. One is called processing. Let me find it here in my list. So it's called processing. I don't know why my checkboxes aren't showing up there, but you want to turn on processing and then go a little bit lower in the list. And we'll be using this one next week, but it's QGIS to web. QGIS to web. Check that one, please. All right. Tell you want to close it. And that should take care of it. What that should do for you is you should have the ability now to go up to a menu that says processing. And right on the top one under processing says toolbox. And it should open up a toolbox over to the right side of your screen. We'll be using one or two of these tools this afternoon, so you're going to need to have it on. I completely forgot that you guys had to do that step until just the other day I was talking with somebody and she started up a new instance and she's like, how do I do it? I can't do it. It's like, it's right there. Oh, it's not. It should be right there, but it's not. Deepak, if you can't install QGIS to web, don't worry about it. We won't use it today. We'll come back and visit about that later. Okay. There might be a trick we have to do that. Mine is already installed, so it works. And you guys might not use it at all. I might just demo it next week, but that was the other plugin I knew we wanted to consider. I know QGIS to web works quite well in your standalone version. There are little weird things inside this environment, so no worries. Okay, I've got about 10 minutes here. I do want to get us into part of this next piece, and that is going to be making our first thematic map. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the project menu, and you're going to tell it new. And you should get a nice white empty map canvas space. All right, so everybody went up to File, New. And now the next thing we have to do is we need to add a piece of data. So if you expand that DSPG directory that you just loaded up, you're looking for one that says vacationstates.shp. All right. Be careful that you don't get the .csv. Get the .shp. Again, there's multiple ways to do this. I'm going to drag and drop it down into my layers. You could drag and drop it onto your map. We could have gone up and used the menus or the buttons to get to this file. We could have gone to the menu to get to the file. This is just the way I'm doing it for today. I'm going to drag and drop it down here. And you should get a window that will pop up. If you are working outside of this environment and you're working on your own machine, then if you're working on your own machine, then this window might pop up on your other monitor. So just be aware of that. For the one instance that's still loading, excuse me, one I can say to do is you have to go back and request it again. I don't know what Ravana is doing or why it's taking so long on these. All right, so if you get this window, it shows up. Then the next thing you have to do is just hit OK. I wonder why that happened. Anyway. So everybody should have a session request. Everybody should have a map of the US. Yeah, you're okay. Yeah, it might not be pink. It might be gray. I think it's a random color. Yes, Laura's is brown. It is a random color. So just be aware of that. Anytime we add a new data layer, it will be a random color. There's probably a way to override that, but I've never looked into it. So let's go ahead and just practice navigating on this map. If we can, let's go use the pan map tool. And you can pan around. We can zoom in as you'd expect. Zoom back out. Okay. The button here for zoom to full, it's kind of weird that it does this, but it's been wrapped around. There's wrap around to here, so that doesn't work quite as well as it should, but on this particular map. But we want to zoom in. We're just going to zoom into the continental United States. And if we then go and pick on a tool that's called the info tool, I'm going to click info. And we'll click on a state. Go here and pick on Utah. And you click on Utah. Over on the right, it should identify your results, and that's just kind of the data that corresponds to that state. Now, the question probably is, where's that data coming from? Where's it at? And that data is stored in our attributes file, or our features file, that is part of this. And so this is really important, so you know how to do this next step. But we want to take a look and actually see what all the attributes are for all of our states as a table. You can right click on a layer. Anytime you have a vector layer, you can right click on it and come down and tell it to open the attribute table. Open the attribute table, you're going to get, I'll set this aside here a little bit, a listing of all the states and territories, I guess in this case, will be listed here. And we'll come back and work on, after lunch, we'll plan to come back and work with this table a bit more. We're a little bit behind my schedule, but we're okay. I do want to guess we can make a simple map here though, before we take our break. So in here, when we have a state codes, that's what most of this stuff is. These are state codes. This GeoID code will be important later on for us. They break it out, they pull it apart too. The 2-digit state name is here, the full state name. This is the area of land, area of water. I think these are in square meters. And then I added a field that tells us how many people said they wanted a vacation in that state based on that survey. And if you click the little arrow, you can find out real quick here that California had the highest number. Now you should always inspect your data. before you start to do too much mapping with it. And this data is in good shape. I worked with it earlier today. So I'm going to close this. The question was, how do you select, if you right click on vacation states and choose to open the attribute table. This attribute table is linked to the map. Let me try and keep both these up here and show you this. So if you go and you take, there's a tool that's got a yellow square on it and an arrow. If you go and you pick, let's say Washington, it highlights in yellow. And you can see when I highlight a state here, it highlights that row in the database. If you hold the shift key down, you can get a couple of states. And so I have 5 states selected. Again, I'm using this tool right here in the top center of my screen called the Select Features tool. And it will show me, it'll highlight the ones that are selected. Bottom left corner of this table, it says Show All Features. You can tell it to only show the selected features as well. And this is one of those gotcha spots I want everybody to just be aware of. And then when it happens to you, you'll say, oh yeah, Professor Seeger told us that would happen. You'll be working one day and you'll realize, oh, where's all my data at? Something's not working here. I can't see it. And you'll forget that at some point during your project, you came down here and you told it to show only the selected features, as opposed to showing all features, or you do a calculation and it only does it on a certain set. Check your filter on the bottom down here. I'm gonna tell it to show all features, and then we're gonna go ahead and close the table. And then once you have selected features, if you want to deselect those features, just to the right of the selection tool, 2 over, is the deselect. We can deselect those features. The way that I got that table is I took the table, it was in my directory that I attached to, and I was able to drag it and drop it on the map or drop it down into my layer. So I just took it and I dragged it either spot. Okay, I mean, I could do the same with Iowa County shape if I wanted to. I could drag it over, drop it on the map. There's all the Iowa counties. Do know that if in my layers, if I drag a county below the other one, it's hidden now. I can turn it on and off. I can see Iowa, or I can turn the United States on over top of it. So just be aware that the order does matter. And I can right click on it and I can also tell it to remove my layer because I don't need that one for what we're doing right now. Okay, last thing I want to do before break is I want to get some color on this map, and I want to identify what states were the most popular states that you guys said you wanted to visit this summer. And then we'll modify this map because we have to add Michigan and New York to it, I guess, yet. So we're gonna come in here, we're gonna right click. This is kind of a weird step until you get used to QGIS, but we're gonna work with it. It's called symbology. We're gonna right click on the layer that we're interested in, come all the way to the bottom and go to properties. Okay, I'll make sure everybody follows that along. Right click on your layer, come all the way to the bottom and choose properties. And it's gonna pull up, maybe not exactly this window, but it's gonna pull up our properties. It might pull up this window. It might pull up this window. Whatever it pulls up on the left side of this pane, the third one down says symbology. That's where you need to be. Give everybody a chance to do that. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to want to fill in the color of the states based upon the number of people who said they wanted to visit the state. And most times I'm teaching GIS, I teach people how to do single symbol colors, and all that's doing is that's just changing the color of your states here right now. You could change its color to be, you can go green, hit apply, mine turned green. But instead of this right here on the top, this is where it's going to be located. Single symbol is right at the top of the screen. Instead of single symbol, I want you to pick graduated. So it's the third one, pick graduated. Everybody go ahead and do that. I will tell you the one that says categorized. We don't really have data that supports categorized right now, but if we'd had data for the states and maybe it told us if they, if it was a yes/no question. If their population is above 10 million, yes. If it's below, it's a no. That's a category, and we could have colored based upon that string or that category. But we're going to do it on graduated. And for the value, you're going to come down and you're going to pick vacation. Okay, so graduated, then vacation. There's a color ramp, and it's already here. But there's other color ramps you can choose if you click it, and you can make your own color ramp. Okay. I'm going to leave it like this for right now, since we need to keep moving along. But you could change them in here or make your own. So if you hit apply, your map's going to go away right now. And that's because we haven't told it what colors to apply to what values. And this is a really easy process. All we have to do is come down below this white space, decide how many different groups you want, and then we can tell it to classify. So I'm going to stay with 5. I'm going to tell it to classify, and it prepares this map for me. Okay, now it's drawing it for me. I'm not really liking those numbers, so I'm going to tell it instead of equal count, I'd like pretty breaks. Apply it. Okay, again, I had 5 classes. So anything from 0 to 1 though is turning out to be white. I really don't want that way. So you can click on this values, double click, I guess. Lower value is 0, upper value is 0. We'll keep those all white. And then anything that is, you can come into here and say 1 to 2. Okay. Oh, they changed that back. Let's keep that 0 to 0. Okay. Anything greater than 0 to 2 is going to be colored with this color, so we can apply. And now we can start to see some of our states showing up. So you can play with this however much you want to, and you can set the value breaks where you want these to show up. We'll hit OK. And what we have here is we now have a map that shows us which states were the most popular to go to. So California and Colorado both had 5. You guys can see that. If you want to do one last step before we take our break, if you right click on vacations, come back to properties. Instead of symbology, just pick labels. There's only one option here, no labels, or you want single labels. And we're going to label it based upon the vacation number. Hit apply, and OK. And now it actually puts the number on the map as well. Jesse, if the value is at a break point, it will, it goes into the bottom one. So 0 to 1, it goes, sorry, if it's 0 to 1, that means 1's not included. 1 should go into the next one. Okay, we'll double check that and see, but that's how it's supposed to work. We were talking about that the other day too in a meeting. It's kind of weird the way that it says it's 0 to 1 and 1 to 0 is how that works. But you got to think of the whole value. Makes a lot more sense when we actually look at decimal numbers than integers. But you can play around with that right here if you want to test out some more. So with that, we're already a few minutes over. Let's go ahead and take a break. If you guys give me 10, 15 minutes, I will be back here online a few minutes ahead of class. So if people still have some questions or need some help, I will be here to give you a hand. In fact, let's meet back at 12:05. So we'll wait till five minutes after before we really start things up. So that gives us 15 minutes for people that need a hand. If your QGIS is not opening, to recommend any other settings to open. The only thing I could say to do is to go back and try and relaunch an instance again. I don't know why it's acting the way that it is at all. The other option, I guess the other option you have, if you want to do this locally on your machine, you can go back and you can download QGIS directly onto your machine and install it. And then I'll make sure I get back here for getting a quick bite to eat. I will post out that link to the repository, and you could download the files you need out of the repo. GPU I suggested, with things being so slow, I suggest tell it the default GPU. I think that uses the least amount of resources. And now if you're also trying to set up a new one, go ahead and tell it you only need 3 hours instead of telling it that you need 5 or something, because the smaller number of hours you put in there, the quicker it is to give you a session. That's been my experience the last 48 hours. Okay, I'll be back in just a bit. If you have the identity results window that was showing, you can close it on the right. Mine was kind of left over from something I did earlier. I did the info tool. I clicked county and it showed my identity results. So that's why I had identity results still available. If you close it, you're okay, it goes away. It can come back when you need it. If you're having trouble seeing the whole screen because of screen size, you can temporarily go and close your processing toolbox. Okay. If you close that toolbox, you can always get it back by going to processing toolbox. Tried to answer the questions. The app instance still isn't launching. Let's go take a look here. So if I tried to launch another one, which I won't, I'd say reduce your hours down to 2. Go with 1 core. Tempted to leave the memory at 6. Go default. Now try launching that. I don't want to launch 2 because I don't want to take any resources, but I would try that setting again and see what it does. Also, I have Thomas online. Thomas works for me, and so he's joining us today, and he'll be joining us next week as well. So, like I said, please, if you have some questions, please put them out there to everybody, because if I'm in the process of lecturing, Thomas might be able to provide a response back on where something is located as we're doing some things, in case I go too fast. All right, everybody can see my screen, is that right?
Yes.
Good, good. I turned my video off, try and save a little bandwidth here. See if it makes some of the graphics a little smoother. people know one more minute here or two, get some people back. I'll look up the form to see what we had for our.
Chris, so I lost you at a point in the previous lecture because my computer kind of hung. So I put in the colors in the vacation states, but then the whole screen disappeared. What do we do next? Can you just give me a brief idea, please?
Do you still have the layer listed in the layer menu on the left?
Yes.
It's probably there. It's probably you turned everything off. We're going to do some settings in a minute that will help you go back to, hopefully we'll bring those colors back. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Yep. All right. One more minute here and then we'll start up. Okay, I added 2 more states. We'll edit in here in just a minute. All right, we got 47. While we wait for those to come, I'll talk real quick here about this map that I pulled up. I mentioned earlier something about the projections. And so here's one person's showing, this came out of the Visual Capitalist, which is kind of an interesting blog if you want to follow it. There's some pretty cool things that get put in there, but fitting all the countries into the continent of Africa. And you can see how the US and China do fit. Europe more or less fits, India and Spain, France, and Germany, in Portugal. Portugal sort of fits in there. But there's some leftover space inside. So bottom line is Africa's big. Little maps to the right are kind of helpful, I think. I like looking at stuff like this to give a spatial representation. You can double check it yourself by just going and looking at the total landmass in square meters and compare between countries. If you wanted to do it that way without doing it visually, you can see the mass size of some of these places, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere. And that's because the maps that were produced initially focused more on the Northern Hemisphere and what have you there. So lots of reasons for what they did. And that's just what everyone we got used to seeing. The Mercator map though does work pretty well, but there's other maps that are for online stuff. There's other maps that have been made with new projections that are also becoming increasingly better to use. It just takes a little bit of time to bring them into systems, because for those of you that use Google Maps quite a bit, the early days of Google Maps, I mean, those are lots and lots of tiles. Every tile is a 256 by 256 pixel square. And every time you zoom out, four of those tiles get condensed into one. The resolution changes. But you have to constantly remain those tiles. But the whole framework in a system is based upon an XY grid that is based on Mercator and the auxiliary sphere. And so to change that is quite a bit of work. And if you're zoomed into a small location, it really doesn't matter. It's accurate as it needs to be then. But it's when you're looking globally that there's issues. And that's why you can, in Leaflet, actually, you can go in and you can change your projections so you can use other projections on your map. And it has that capability to do it. But that's more localized. And also in QGIS we're working, we can obviously change our projections as well. So let me get caught back up to where we need to be. So we're making our thematic map and we have added some features to it. I want to go back in for us and do a few other changes here in case some of you lost your map. What we ended with was we had added some labels. I'm going to do that one more time. I'll change labels again since we did that kind of quick. But first I want to go back and talk about the colors in case you ended up with an entirely white map and lost all your color. And I know Deepak's had happened to him. I think probably happened to a few other people. So we're gonna go back in. Is everybody ready to go? Should kind of give me a thumbs up. Looking okay. All right. Good. So what, let me get the screen situated. I can see what you guys are doing better. Okay. What I want to do is I'm going to come back into my right click on vacation stats. We're going to go to properties. I'm going to go to our symbology. Pull this over slow ways. And I was playing around here. Jesse had a question before the break, and didn't fully answer her question the way I wanted to, so I went back and looked. 0 to 1 is 0. Okay. It's 0, but it includes the 1, and since we have a 1 value in it, it's going to show these numbers. So you need to come back in here and tell it 0 to 0. And if you do that, then you're going to get this representation. We can change this number to 1, not 12. And I'm okay with 1 to 3, but I'm going to go 1 to 4. Or sorry, 1 to 2. So I'm just changing all my values. It goes 2 to 4. I prefer to go to 3. I'll go 3 to 4. And here we go to 5. I'm gonna hit apply. I should have some green ones now. So you can customize that however you want to, and most likely you will need to. How do we add information in the classes tab? Okay, so I have this map. I'm gonna start fresh. Okay, does that sound good, everybody? I'm gonna do, you saw what I just did here. I'm gonna do it one more time and make sure everyone has this, because we're gonna build on this throughout the afternoon. So I'm gonna take away what I've done. And to do that, I can just go back and tell it from graduated to be a single symbol. Simple fill. It made it white. I want to make it a color just to start with. Okay. With the exception of my labels, I'm back to where I started. I'm going to right click on it, go to properties, symbology again, I hope. And single symbol is going to now become graduated. The value is our vacation. And then the bottom down here, I'm going to tell how many classes I want and then hit classify. So I'm going to start with just 3 classes, or 2 classes, I guess. And then I can tell it automatically classified for me, or I can hit the classify button. I can also hit the plus or minus to add additional values into this. Then you can go and you can edit these. You can change the order if you need to. So let me make order. I'm going to switch this back to 4 classes. Oh, too many. A little bit of a delay, it seems, here. It's responsiveness. We'll apply it, and it's back to using making these tabs. Deepak, did that answer your question for the classes tab?
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. And then you can go in and edit those as needed. All right. So I just want to make sure, though, that my numbers are kind of weird. So I want to show you something here that you can do. Okay, that's a little bit better, at least for now. What happens if you uncheck one of these? I'm going to uncheck the first one and hit apply, and it goes away. So now we have a map that does not show the other states, because the other states had 0 visitors to them. And that's just a nice little trick that you can use if you are trying to make a map and you only want to show certain features that meet certain criteria. We're going to be doing some query selections in a little bit, and I'll show you the correct GIS way to do things. But as far as I'm concerned, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this from a presentation standpoint. If all you want to do is take a screenshot and export out the screenshot to show something, obviously the here looks kind of strange, but you can do this and you can just uncheck one of the symbol categories and present your map that way if you need to. So just be aware of that. I'll bring it back. While we're in here, let me go ahead to the ones that got California in it. I'm going to double click the color swatch itself. So mine's a red box. I'm going to double click it. When you double click it, you can go in and change its properties. You can make it become a hatch like this. Okay. I'm going to double click it again. I'm going to still tell it that it is a fill color here. I'm going to go to, I'm just going to pick a simple red again. This is what's called a simple fill. There are additional symbol types. There's a simple fill, there's outline, point pattern, all kinds of stuff. One of the easiest things you can do if you get lost is when you double click your swatch, go down this little library of pre-made ones, pick a color, hit OK, and it's going to bring you back to the simple fill. Then you can go back into it and you could change your color. So maybe instead now I want to bring this. Let's go up to here. Hit OK. You can add colors to save a swatch library. But the main thing is you can go back and you can switch a color. We can also change our opacity of that color. Watch really close here if you would, please. Where it says simple fill. For the longest time, I always just thought it was a subcategory to fill. It didn't mean anything. Go ahead and click on it. And when you click on it, you get another menu. So you have this fill menu on top, which gives you some options. If you click the second one down, you can have additional options, one of which is your stroke color. So I'm going to go with a black line. I'm going to make my fill now be, oh, let's go to our wheel, more of a yellow. Oops, let me get that right. And I'm going to make my outline to stroke. Instead of being 2, make it a little thicker, hit OK. I'll apply it, and you can see I have a thicker line around this. So I don't expect to do all those things right now, just to be aware that there's a lot of playing that you can do with the software just in symbology alone to start to learn how to make different effects. One of the benefits over QGIS, I think, over its competitor ESRI's products is it tends to be, because the people developing it come from a data science or a graphic focus, they want to see abilities to do more cartographic styling with it in their maps. So there are additional plugins you can put on to help you, but there's a lot of stuff built into the software now for doing additional layering of symbols or symbology. For example, I could do 2 symbols. One would have been the color and the other would have been the hashed lines of a different color. I could use that to make one symbol. You can combine things together to make just one. So just be aware that that's available. We're going to go ahead and we'll hit apply and say OK. There should be 2 states that look like this now. So any questions at the moment? We're going to move on to well, let's see, we're going to move on. We're going to just check the labels on here, and then we're going to go and we will do some querying of these map features. We'll stay with this map for now. Again, the labels, right click, properties. It was labels. You can make really complex labels, but we are not doing that. We're just doing single. And choose the vacation as the field. But we could also have chosen the name. You can change your font and everything here too. You can put a background on it if you wanted. Shadow. Let's apply it. And now we have the names of the states. Again, you got to apply the rules because if you're zoomed way out, it looks messy. some of the rule-based things you can do has to do with how it places the text on it, and it only shows the name of that state when you've zoomed in close enough to see it. Obviously, this is a bigger problem in the Northeast part of the country than it is in the West, where we have more space to write the state's name. But be aware that that is the labels. There are a whole series of label tools right here where my mouse is going over. And you can go and you can pick an individual thing and you can look at its label and work on that individual one. But we're not going to worry about that today, other than letting you know that there's more labeling to explore here. Okay, not seeing any questions. I want to move on to querying data. I think to do this, I'm going to go and I'm going to take my labels off, guys, and make this kind of go back to a default. So I go to no labels. If you leave labels on, that's fine. And for my symbology, I'm just go to single symbol. Color. Oops. Get my fill in there. Okay, so I have just a single map, all right? So instead of looking at it from a colored standpoint for the number of states, we want to just go in here and we want to do a query. And so our query tools, and we'll use these quite a bit. There's 4 of them here I want to talk about. And the one right here, if we pull it down, you can see you can select by features, select by polygon, or draw stuff, okay? This is really just selecting. There's nothing other than picking them on the map, but you can, by polygon, I could draw a box in this area. And no, it's not closing it. There. I clicked on it, right click, anything I intersected with my box, it highlighted. There's my deselect tool. Let's do this again. Drawing a polygon. Right click at the end, and it picked any of the states that my polygon went over. You know, deselect. And there's a radius. You can do a radius one. And this will be kind of weird. You can fix them that way. All right, so that's one type of selection. The more informative type of selection is when we can actually select based upon a value that's in our data set. And so there's a submenu here. The little arrow gives you a submenu. And we can select features by value. So I'm going to choose that option. And I'm going to go down to the vacation. And what I want to do is I want to use the equal. So let me do this again for you. I went to select features by value. Go down to vacation. Tell it that I want to use the equal to. And I want to type in the number 1. I'm going to click on select features, and all of the states that had one visitor identified or one person wanted to visit that state are now selected. So that was the equal. We could have done a greater than, and I'm going to say greater than 0. Select my features. Oops, I don't think I did that quite right. Let's do there. So there's all the ones that now have a greater than 0 value. Well, I want to change that to say greater than 3. I'm not sure why it's not picking up my. Oh, went back to equals. I gotta make sure I get the greater than. There you go. There's my 2 states that had more than 3. Okay, so that's a select by feature value. You could have had a name. Maybe I only wanted to, I'll say exclude this field. I only wanted to find a state that had the name Dakota in it. Again, it populates for me. It just has to contain. There it selects both the 2 North Dakota and South Dakota states. So that is a select features by value. We can deselect. You can also write out larger expressions. So here's this window. We won't go into this that much other than I'll tell you that it's quite powerful. If you wanted to do a selection, I'll just demonstrate one here. I can go into fields and values, double click on vacation, tell that equals, and I'm gonna say equals 1, and select my features. And so I wrote a formula out and then told based on that formula. When you start using expressions, you can start to combine lots of things together and make a complex expression. So if you have many fields of data, maybe it has to meet criteria in multiple fields in order to be selected. So that gives us that option. Now I said vacation equals 1, and I selected my features, right? In the select features button, there's an add to current, remove from current. Well, I'm gonna go to add to current this time. I want it to equal 2, and hopefully I'll pick up a couple states. I tell it add to current selection, and it added those additional states that now had 2. So now I have 1 and 2 both selected, but I did 2 steps by doing the first step and then adding the features. Of course, I'd be better if I said that vacation is between 1 to 2, but this way works as well. So that's using a feature. You can, once I'm gonna close this, these are selected. One of the other things in the select menu is you can invert your selection. So sometimes it's easier to select the things you don't want, and then you can invert it back and select everything else. So just another way to go about selecting data. Now, why might you want to select your data? What can you do with it when you select your data? One of the things that you can do, I'll leave it open here first. What do you guys think? Why might I want to be able to select my data? See if anybody's even out there. Yep, subset it. Important features are right. Focusing on particular places, we could find the area of interest that we have. Absolutely. Kind of like I showed you with the symbology, we could turn colors on and off. Here I have a selection of maybe, let's say these are the states. I'm going to reverse my selection. Let's invert this. Maybe these are the states of interest for us to do some type of ad campaign. Oh, I see the question. Oh, if you have red X's on the border, no, I had that yesterday too. I think it has to do with one of the styling things. I didn't have anything wrong with mine either. Let's see if it persists. Okay, so I had these selected. What I can do, this is one other trick I like to do, is I can make a new data coverage or a new shapefile out of what met my criteria in the selection. So about using R stuff now, let's say we're going to use the QGIS to help us do some of our queries because it's really easy to do, and we get a result. But now we want to do something with that in R. We can export this out. I'm going to right click on the layer of interest. I can go to export, and I can export or save selected features as, and I'm going to save them as a shapefile. I'll call it, you can't just type in the file name. I found it here. You have to go and tell it where you want to save it. I think I can save it here. Shapefile, I'll call it test export, save. I can pretty much leave the rest alone, but I do like to set my geometry type to what it's supposed to be. And I will hit OK. And what it did for me is it exported this back out. It's not, this is the shared directory, so it's in actually my own directory. So if I look at my home directory, there they are, test export right here. These are the files I just exported, all right. It also adds it back in as a new layer for you. That's one of the options in the export. I stuffed mine on. But now there are just those states. It's its own new shape file and everything. In fact, if I look at the attribute table, you can see that there are only 9 states that got exported out. And that's it. So that's a way to refine your data set and make it smaller and only contain the information that you want. So that's one of the powerful things about exporting a selection. I'll turn that one off, bring this one back. Oh yeah, Thomas is right. Jesse, you might be in editor mode, which is right where we're headed. So I'm going to deselect everything. So if you have anything selected, please unselect it. And the next thing I want to have us do is we're going to edit our table. We've got some new information. We want to bring it in. So let's go to our vacation states. We're going to right click and we're going to open the attribute table. And in the top left corner of the tools, there is a little pencil. And if you click on that pencil, it'll highlight some tools. I'm going to check something here just to answer. Yeah, you're right. There it is. There's your editing. I think that's what Jesse was saying. One's selected there and it's got these little X's on it. Yeah, I forgot about that. A lot of times I do table editing. I don't look at my map. I'm just editing my table. So let me deselect. And open my attribute table. So I turn my pencil on and you can see what you can do is you can actually go in and you can change the name of a state. You can change anything you want. What we want to change some of our values for the vacation because I got 4 more people submitted information. And so I'm going to go to California. It might, if you want, you can sort this however you want, but California was on the top of my list. And I'm going to change it to a 6. When you're done, just click on another box and it will change it for you. So California gets increased by 1. The great state of Idaho actually has somebody who wants to visit Idaho. So we're going to go from a 0 to 1. Michigan has been, I think, is a new state for us to add. So now I'm going to sort alphabetically. It's a little easier for me to find these. And New York, of course. Keep in mind, though, if you're going to go from California to New York right now, it's a 14-day quarantine. Well, that and many other states into New York. Let's see. What did I say? I was going to go to New York. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I've added those 4 states in. Still in editing mode, right? I'm going to come back over here and keep my editing mode going. I'll go back to my symbology. Go back again and do a graduated color. System's really slow right now. Based on vacation, classify, 3 breaks. We'll make that first one be 0. If everything's working, we got Idaho showing up. We have New York showing up now. Okay, Michigan's showing up. To test this out, though, we're going to come down here. We're going to make this last one, change its color. Doesn't matter what it is. There we go. It now has a value of 6. So when you're done editing, very important that you don't forget to do this part, and that is to save your edits. And to save your edits, you can click the little save icon, toggle editing off. It'll also ask you if you want to save your edits. And you can go ahead and save them. Not sure what happens. Since we're using a shared file, I'm kind of curious what happens when we save those. Well, it's not a shared file. It's been copied into your local directory. So you should be okay saving that. So that's editing. That was super simple, right? Editing a table. Okay. Shape files are kind of hard to edit outside of your GIS program because they are DBF files. And it was a long, long time ago that Excel actually supported DBF files, and they don't anymore. I think you can still work with a DBF file in one of Google's programs, but it's hard to work with DBF files. Best thing to do now is edit them right here, or we can join data to existing geometry, which is what we're going to do in just a moment. But before we do that, this is a good opportunity to show you, without messing anything up, I can show you this calculator since we're in the table. So if everybody will open up their table, please. I want to show you just a couple things in tables that you can do. First, you can right click on a label and you can tell it if you want to hide a column name. You can hide a column. So maybe I know I don't need those. They don't go away. They just get hidden from you. If you need them back, you can right click on your layer. Like most things, go to properties, go to your fields, and you can see what's going on there, and you can start to bring things back. Okay, so there's ways to hide and unhide labels, but we don't need those two, so we'll turn them off, and we're gonna come over here. What I want to do is I want to create a brand new field. And so as part of table creation, now I'm going to demonstrate this here because I want to show you the tool for doing this, but general table creation is we're bringing data in. It's just like R. You can only have the column can only have a certain type of data in it. If it's going to be all integers, then it's all integers. You cannot mix string data or character data with numerical data and then expect that everyone's going to act like numerical data. Also try and avoid nulls if you can. Typically, if you try to map something based on a null value in the symbology, it won't map. That's why zeros were better. When I first started this, I had null values and vacations, and it was weird to get them to do anything I wanted them to do. So it better have it as 0. But the main thing is make sure you know what the name that your field contains, either all numbers, or it can be floating point. It could be decimal numbers. That's fine too. All right. So if we want to create a new field, we can create a new field with, let's see, go back to editing. When my editing is turned on, there's a icon here for a new field and a delete a field. You guys can just watch this part. This next piece here, you don't need to do this one next piece, and then I'll have you do the piece after. But I'm gonna make a new field, and I'm just gonna call it Chris. When you make a new field, you can choose integer, decimal, text, date, or date and time. And then if you choose a decimal number, you can tell the length and the precision. So that's how many whole numbers and how many decimal numbers are going to be in that. All right, I'm going to cancel this. I'm not going to save this one, but it would create a new column for me. If I know I need to do a calculation into a column right away, instead of making a new column, instead I can jump over and I can use the field calculator. Now I'm going to go out. What's neat about this is I'm going to go turn editing off. So my editing is off. Field calculator button is still available, which I think is cool. I'm going to open this up. And when I open up the field calculator, 2 important things right off the top. I can create a new field, or I can update an existing field. I'm going to create a new field. And on this new field, I'm going to call it Chris Vac. I'm going to make sure it's a whole number. And I'm going to give it an expression. Okay. And it's going to, we're going to take another field. So I want to go into the expression is going to be Hopefully this will work. I didn't practice ahead of time. But I'm gonna go to vacation. I'm gonna take vacation value. I'm gonna multiply it times 10. New field, and it's good. So vacation times 10. Again, this was in fields and values, found a numerical field. Also, these little icons tell you if it's a string or if it's text. I'm gonna hit OK. And here's my new field. And again, we can check 1 times 10 was 10, 3 times 10 was 30. It worked just fine for me. So you can use that tool. Again, that tool can become extremely robust once you start learning how to use it to calculate new values. I could have, if I had, let's say I had 3 scores. Let's say we collected we had three individuals judged the tourism of all the states. Okay, these are 3 critics, and they ranked them, or they somehow gave us a value for them. And so each column we have our 3 individual critiquers and what their score was for the state. We could have made a new column, and we could have taken and we could have added those together and then divided by 3 and got an average score of the 3. And that could be our new summary, critique summary score that had been added. We could have mapped based on that instead of mapping on the individual 3. So there's an example of something that you could do with the field calculator. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close this. Are there any questions before we move on to the next thematic map? This is really weird not seeing you guys because I've always taught this GIS course face-to-face with people, so. All right. Let's do this. Let me go back to my slides. And real quick, before we get into the data, we're gonna be using some, I downloaded some census data ahead of time, and that's what you have available for you, but I want to tell you where it came from. The geographic data that we've been using all came from something called Tiger Data, and they provide shape files, the US Census does, that you can download for several different areas, including counties, states, cities, census tracts, census block groups, I think census blocks too are there. School districts, which is interesting, are in there. Congressional districts, all kinds of stuff is in here. Just do a Google search for census tiger line shape files. I did, in my notes, I do provide a link to these as well. I'm going to copy and paste this one right now into chat. You do not need to do anything with it, but oh, let me get this right, people here. I would say if you want to copy and paste it out and store it in your notes, this one is really handy to have. But it has all these different things you can download. You will notice in our course directory, I'm going to jump over this part of my lecture to save us some time, but when you download files from here, for example, this congressional districts one, there's a 500K, a 5 meter, and a 20 meter. That has to do with the quality of the data. You notice the 500K meaning 500,000. It's the scale at which it was mapped. That file has got more, the boundary edges are a little bit more fine-tuned or exact than they would be, say, in the 5 meter or the 20 meter. Now, if we're working at the national level and we're looking at on a small map on our screen of the entire United States, we can probably get by a 20 meter. So 1 megabyte file, pretty good. You can do 6.5 meter. But if we're that far zoomed out, do we really need 500K? Maybe not. I mean, and that's 500K. A lot of stuff I work with at a state level is more like 100K or 24. So it's a much finer resolution. There are tools you can use to help get rid of the extra vertices. What they've done is they've gotten rid of the extra vertices and rounded out some corners to make things just a smaller file, which means your system runs faster. It didn't change anything in that polygon for the data itself. It just changed the boundary edges to clean it up. That whole area of GIS, where you're working with the edges and the boundaries and stuff like that, is referred to as topology. And you're more than welcome to go research that all on your own. But it's quite an extensive field. with a lot of stuff mapped nowadays, I think there's a little bit less focus on topology because a lot of us reuse the same polygons. But initially they kept adjusting things as GPS became better and satellite coverage became better. They started to find out some of the old survey data wasn't as good as they thought. A lot of that stuff's getting cleaned up and is improved, and the topology now matches up. So that means, you know, if you have two states next to each other, the boundary lines should have the same boundary line for each, instead of one saying, well, we think we're 5 feet further over than you are. Hopefully most of our states have that worked out, and these types of issues are left to neighbors deciding which side, whose property the fence is actually on, those types of issues. But that's exactly what topology is. The other thing we have coming for us is going to be the tabular data that comes out of the census. And these are profiles. I would love to spend 20 minutes going through and showing you exactly how to download these, but I don't have that time right now today, other than to give you this URL, because I think this URL is a great one to start with. I will tell you, if you go into this web page and you pick county or state, when you get here, you know what? I gotta show you something on here, because wish I didn't do it that way. Let me do it this way. This is actually, I think, something you guys can use as you're working on DSPG. So I'll let this load up. So this is the ACS data. This was released in December of 2019, but it's the most recent ACS would be the 2018. And if you came in here and you told that you wanted state data, and you select your state, I'm gonna go ahead and pick Virginia. I can go get the date profile links, and there's gonna be 4 of them. And you can pick which one you want, but I'm gonna pick social characteristics. And here are the social characteristics for Virginia. And my page is huge. Let me make this down a little smaller. Okay, you could go ahead and just download this data right here if you wanted to, and you would download into a CSV. Or you can go and you can customize it. I will tell you, when you download data like this, you end up with a second column or second row of data that you do need to remove before you can work with it in GIS. And typically that second row has some expanded information. The top row will have your header identifier, but the next one's got a descriptive text of it. And it's great to have as a backup for you to refer to your data, but you'll need to delete it before you can use it in GIS. But I'm going to customize this table. And what I've learned is if you customize it, you go to geography, you can come over here and tell it that you actually want to see county data. And then you have to pick all counties in which state. So I said Virginia. And then you can pick individual counties, or you can tell it all. And I'm going to close. And what it should be doing now is drawing the data table for me of all of this data. Give it a second, hopefully it doesn't crash. All right, so there is every county in Virginia. For every attribute that you get, you're going to have, yep, I'll post that back there a second, Laurel. Every county that you get, or every attribute that you get, you're going to get an estimate, a margin of error on that estimate, a percent, and a percent margin of error. So just know for everything there's going to be 4 values. Thanks, Susan. Yeah, if you can get both out there, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so we have all this data right here. Now we want to go download it. Let's go click download. And for this one, for the DPO2 series, there's only 2018 is the only year. On the other 3 data series, they have other years that you can select. So just be aware of that. But I'm going to go ahead and I will download this. It's an 880 kilobyte file. And so it has to prepare it for me. And then as soon as this downloads, let me get my download ready. This will help you understand what I did to get our data ready for today. All right, so I'm going to tell download now. It's doing that. Okay, and this is what I get. I get 3 download files, 2 CSVs, and 1 text file. My text file gives me just a description of where the stuff came from. More important to you though are these 2 CSVs, one of which is your metadata. Let me start there. I'm going to open this up. I'm on a Mac right now. I'm going to use I just double click it. I'll probably just use numbers. Make it clean. So here's my field names. So DP02_0001E is my estimate of households by type. And then the same DP number with an M is my margin of error. The PE is my percent error, or sorry, percent estimate. And then my PM is my percent margin of error. Okay, so those 4 fields all deal with households by type. Households by type for total number of households, sorry. And you can see this list goes on and on and on. There's a lot of stuff in this one data file. And I think this is one we actually messed around with. Yeah, this is the one I did mess around with for us. I grabbed a couple fields up front and then I grabbed some stuff on computer use. So here's my metadata that I used. The actual data looks like this. You have a GeoID here. We're going to use this to link off of in a moment. And then these fields go on and on and on, right? The column I said you do need to get rid of is this, sorry, the row you have to get rid of is this row right here. You cannot use this in the GIS unless you use this. Sorry, I was reading the text over here. You have to get rid of this row in order for it to work in the GIS. Okay, so that's where your data comes from. And then I got rid of a bunch of columns of data to make our data sample smaller. So that's the census data. I saw Kent and Kishore, yeah, for you guys, all I did is I just went over showing them where the data came from. I can follow up with you guys at Iowa State later tomorrow if I need to show you this step. You didn't miss anything in terms of what we did. I just showed them where the data came from. And so this is that data downloaded. I cleaned it up. I have stuff ready for us to use. As Todd Abraham mentioned earlier in your lecture last week, when you download your data, you always keep an original. And once you start doing any modification to it, it's always a copy of that original data. And actually I ended up with 2 copies because I added that 1 row right away. It's not needed. And then I can, that becomes my master file. But this was getting data off of the census. And the data profile, it was here. So I'm going to close these up just to free up some space. And we'll take a look at the next slide, which is we need to go ahead and join that data onto our map. So let me get both things set up. And so what we're seeing here is just a map of all the counties. We're going to start with a map of all the counties. And I will show you that right now in QGIS. So in QGIS, let's go to, we could save the project right now. If you wanted to save your project, you could do a save as or a save, and it'll save it as a .qgz. That's the extension name that it would save. A .qgz is what it would save it as. I'll say class demo 1. And if you wanted to come back to this, then you sure could. But that's saving your files. when you save that project file, it doesn't save the files that are over here in the layers list with it. It saves a link to those files. So if you went and deleted vacation states and you open up the project in the future, it wouldn't know where that data is at. So always make sure you try and keep your data and your projects in a confined area or together so that you can transport and move them. Once you delete one of the files out, then the project will open up and say, hey, where's that file at? So we're gonna start new. So if anybody was just joining in and wanted to start with a new map, that's what we're gonna do right now. You're gonna go to project new. I already saved once, or you can discard, it doesn't matter. I don't know why we're getting a Python code today, error, but we're skipping it because it didn't break anything yet. And I want you to go and add, remember I talked about you have a 20 meter or a 5 meter county map. I would like to have you go into the US county 20 meter, expand it, or open up its diamond or caret, I guess they're called, and find the shapefile that's in there. Oop, I'm catching the wrong thing. Find the shapefile, and you can just drag and drop that shapefile either on your map or down to your layers. You may hit OK on this window that pops up, close on that. It will add in a map. I'll mention this projection that shows Alaska way up there and Hawaii way out there. There is another projection that actually brings those two states in, and it tucks them right down here in the corner below California in this area. You've seen a lot of maps where they do that in print just so they can save space. There is a projection that actually does that, goes and takes those two states and brings them in closer so you can do have a map of the entire United States here and not take up so much space geographically to show it. And if I think of it, I'll try and put that in on Tuesdays, or I'll make a note of it to share with you later. But okay, so we have all of our states, right? First thing we're gonna do is I want you to practice doing a categorical classification of the symbology. Here's how we do this. You're gonna right click on, does anybody not have the states or the counties pulled in? Okay, good. So, 1 second. My phone's gonna do something here weird. Okay. We're going to right click on this and we're gonna go to properties and symbology. And this time you're gonna choose categorized. And for your category, I want you to look and see if you can find, we're just gonna go with the state FP. For some reason, the state name is not in here, but the state FP is the state FIPS code number. So if you pick that, it should be the same for every county in that state. Random colors is fine. We're down here in Delta Classify. It's gonna classify all of the states, hit OK. And you should have a map that kind of looks like this. So each state is colored randomly. So you might have some mixed match things, but it's kind of cool. I just want to show you that that's how categories work. And it's because if I go and I do a little selection here of a couple counties in Oregon, or sorry, in Washington, and I show you just the selected, oops, I closed it. Do that again, select just a few. Here's just the selected ones. They all have a state FP of 53. And that's why those all got colored the color that they did. Okay, so now we have this map. I'm gonna go back and we're going to see on this one, we're doing our census data. Let's go ahead and bring our census data in. And to bring our census data in, go ahead and you are looking for this file. It says the ASDP02. It's the 5-year census 2018 _ cleaned. Make sure you bring the one that says cleaned. Another second to do that. Okay, if we go ahead and do a right click and we look at our attribute table for our ACS data, you're going to look at it and you're going to say, hey, there's only 99 records. Well, we have an entire map of the United States. The reason for this is because this is my ACS file for the state of Iowa. And so it doesn't really make a lot of sense for us to use the entire United States to make this map. So the first thing I have you do then, instead of going and jumping in to work with our ACS data, is let's make a map from this that's of just Iowa counties. And so this is fairly easy for us to go do. We're going to go to our select menu, and I'll pull this down, leave this open so you can see it. But we're going to select features by value. All right, make sure everybody can do this. Select features by value. I just told you I'm in the wrong layer. You got to make sure you highlight the layer that you need to be in the layers menu. I was in the tabular data, be in this layer. And we're going to select features. Oops, wrong. Select features by value. For the state FP, I'm going to type in number 19 because Iowa is 19. And it needs to equal. All right, I hit select features and it selects Iowa for me. Make sure everybody can do that. So select by features, state FP is number 19. I told it to be equal to. I then told it to select features. They highlighted, and now I'm going to hit close. Now I will come over and I will export out the selected features into their own new shapefile. So right click on the layer, down to export. You're going to save selected features as. So that's right clicking on the layer, export, and then save selected features as. At which part, Deepak?
Oh, sorry. So how do you select features by value in Iowa? I lost you.
So on the menu up here, I went to select. It's the middle one of the three. It's select features by value.
Okay, got it. I was clicking the wrong button.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, no, it looks like, I don't know why it looks like it's highlighted there. It's like the computer's not releasing the code on it. And I just typed in 19. It by default went to that. Hit close. It's kind of nice. It tells you a little message up here that, hey, 99 features were selected. So yeah, I have selected these. I'm going to right click, export, and I'll make sure it is saved selected features. Otherwise, you're gonna get, if you do the top one, you're gonna get the entire United States. So just save selected features as. It's gonna open up this dialog. You need to use the little ellipse symbols here and go and navigate to your home directory. And I'm just gonna call mine Iowa counties. Save. So make sure it's got a path name to where it's going to save it. Otherwise, for some reason, it seems to not work on here. And I'm just going to tell it's a polygon. It's telling you earlier that there is a more options below. But we don't need to adjust any of those. You can pick and choose which fields you want to export out or don't export out as well. So it's, again, pretty powerful tool. But we're gonna hit OK. And here's a add saved file to map. We have that checked, and we want to do that anyway. We want to come added to our map. So we'll hit OK. And it added my new layer called Iowa counties. And I'm gonna uncheck the nation then. And if I go up to my zoom full, it will zoom to that current layer. So I had Iowa County selected and went to zoom full. So everyone get a chance to do that. Ask me if you have a question or put it in the chat. Thomas is here too. He can help you get through that. This is where the fun, more fun begins now, because we're going to join data to this. As you guys are pulling that together, I'll show you here our Iowa counties attribute table. Excuse me. It doesn't have much in it. You know, there's not much for data other than the name of the county. And that's pretty much it. I guess the area, the land and water area. But important field in here is we have a GeoID, and we have one called the AFF GeoID. What's important for you to know right now and remember is that this AFF GeoID contains the really long version of the GeoID, and this one's the short version. It's be important in a moment. Just know that there's two of them. We're going to use the AFF one. Okay, so you guys have a map of Iowa? Okay. Let's next go and join some data. Joining data is pretty easy if you have good data. What we have to do, again, make sure that your Iowa counties is the selected layer. That makes this easier to do. We're gonna right click. And, well, sorry, before I do that, I'm gonna open this up too and show you the data we're joining. I mentioned the GeoID. Here's its GeoID. It is the same number, okay? That field is the same, and we'll join based on that field. So back, I have Iowa counties as my selected layer. I'm gonna right click, go to properties. In the properties window, down a little bit on the left, there's someone that says joins. I'll make sure everybody can get to that. So we selected Iowa counties, we right clicked for properties, we went to joins. That's where we need to be right now. Okay, when you have join selected, come down to the little plus symbol and tell it you want to make a new join. Because we only have the few fields available here, or the few data layers available here, it auto-populates for us the join layer, because it knows the only join layer out there for us to work with is this CSV file that we imported, okay? Otherwise, you'd have to select this yourself if you had several of them showing up in your table of contents or your layer manager. Okay, and you can see I can switch to other stuff, but I want to use this one as my join layer. The join field is going to be this GeoID. The target field is the field inside of Iowa counties that it should use as the link come up. And I told you there is a GeoID in here, but that's not going to work. What's going to happen is it's going to join your data, but you're going to get all null values. Make sure you choose AFF GeoID. All right, this next button asks, can your join be saved in virtual memory? I want to leave this on this time so you can see what it looks like when it's in virtual memory versus being saved as a separate file. One of the downsides in this is if you save it in virtual memory, it's easier to lose if your computer crashes, but it also runs much faster than, especially with big files, if you're using virtual memory. So you're using RAM instead of hard drive and having to read write all the time. And I think I'm going to leave everything else saying, oh, I do want to put a custom name prefix, okay? If I didn't do this, every new field column name is going to come in with this data ahead of it. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to put a simple C for census and an underscore. Okay, whatever practice you want, but I didn't want that long name. I do like that you can change this here. So custom field name. Let's hit OK. And we're going to hit OK down here. And you look at it, nothing's really changed, right? You open up, however, your attribute table for your counties. You will now see all these fields have been appended to your table. Okay, so is everybody able to see that you have these extra new fields? This is where you would need to go back and consult your meta file to help remember what all these field names mean. Here's one of them though. You can organize your columns if you needed to and turn some on and off right here. There is a way you can go in and you can actually change an alias for them. But for right now today, we're going to keep these where they are. But here's this column is the estimate. I remember this one. It's my total number of households. So now if we want to go and symbolize based on one of those, we can right click, go to our properties, symbology, going to do graduated, and we're going to choose, oh, that's not quite right. Brought this in, but brought in as a string. I'm not sure why it's doing that in this environment. Let me look. It's not treating those as numbers right now. And that's going to take me a couple minutes to investigate. So we might move on for the moment, but know that it brought these in, and that you should be able to go and map right now based upon these values. Obviously, for total households, there's no percent, but the actual raw number is right here, but it's acting like it's a string. Okay, since I don't know how to fix that or what went wrong for us, I'm going to show you a way to fix it. Anyway, when I've had this happen before, I didn't want to take the time to investigate. I do know what happens. Sometimes when you bring in a CSV file, it interprets if it's a string or a number, and there's different things different operating systems do. And we're running on, I think, on this Linux VM, and there might be an extra step that I had to do that I have to investigate. But for the moment, let's do this instead. Let's just go and make a new field calculator. I'm going to create a new field. I'm going to call it T households. And it's going to equal, it's going to be an integer. Go into my fields. I need a bigger screen. There we go. It's going to equal this first one. So I'm forcing it to be an integer in this case. Hope. Hit OK. And probably added it to the end. And here it is at the end. Now let's see if this works. Go to my properties. Graduated. Now I have total household. Okay, so that was the problem. It, for some reason, brought those in and it didn't recognize that they should have been numbers instead of string. So I will get a note posted out there for you guys and what that did. Yep, add a new column. I will. Jesse, I'll do that again in just a minute. I'll do another field because I want 2 of them. But now if I did do this, graduated, and we did the ramp, and we classified. There's our classified on total households. And for those of you that are familiar with Iowa, this makes a lot of sense. Des Moines in this area here, so it's got one of the higher number of total households. East part of the state. These lower two rows or tiers of counties are not quite highly populated at all. They're quite rural. It makes sense that they don't have that many total households. All right. I do want to go back and show you how to add that again. I'm kind of bummed out. I'm really curious why it brought those in as a string instead of a number, but I'm opening my attribute table. And this time, let me look at my cheat sheet here real quick, which I have right here. So we've grabbed total households. Let's go get the estimate for, it's going to be the percent of households with a computer. So it's going to be 151 PE. Right there, 151 PE. So I'm going to again do a field calculator. We'll get to that part in a minute. I'm going to come down here while I remember the name of the field. 151 PE. It's right here. See, it's showing me too that you guys can see. It's showing me an ABC, and it should come in as a number. But nonetheless, we're fixing it. Double clicking. That is our, that'll show as a percent estimate. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to tell it, though, instead of being a whole number, that it is going to be a decimal number. This is fine. We're going to say the field name is computer percent. You can only type in a shapefile, you're limited to how many characters you have. So we'll say comp per. Looks good. Okay. And here's my computer percentages. All right, and it looks the same as this one right here. We just add extra zeros, not a big deal. Did that help, Jesse? So now we can also map based on that instead if we wanted to. So where are the house, instead of household, let's go computer percentages, classify it. We clean up our legend if we needed to, but hit apply. And you can see the lower percentages are also these rural counties that are not very populated in the bottom part of the state. Yeah, I had that same problem, Jesse, in the thing here. I had to kind of stretch it out to make it work, but you got the general idea of what we're trying to do there. What I want to do here real quick before we move away from this data set is I want to do a query on both of these fields. And sometimes it's good to know what's in your data set before you do a query. And so you could open this up and open attributes, and we could go at the end here, and I could, sort it smallest to largest. I see my smallest is 1641. I can see what the highest is. Let's look at one more field. I have another field of information here. Let's go ahead and grab, and I'll do this one up here. It's the population 25 years, and and over that has less than ninth grade. This is also percentage, 59 PE. I'll go make one more field with that information in it. Field calculator. Yeah, I should have a better name for it, but for the moment it's gonna be fine. Field values. So this one, it is a decimal number. I'm gonna bring my precision back to 2. Okay, so now I have 2 values. I have my computer percentage and my education percentage with less than ninth grade. And you can see if you sort through this data that it goes as high as 14.8% in one county. So keep that in mind here. Oh, and the lowest computers go are 71. I mean, I can always see what we're going to find out in a second here, but if you wanted to do and get some statistics on one of these fields, there is a menu up here that is vector menu. Basic statistics for fields. So vector analysis tools, basic statistics. If you ran it on that layer, pick your field, do this one. The total households, and we run it. Didn't work. What's going on this thing? Well, it will push out for you a statistics on what those numbers are. There's another way you can do this too. I wonder if this is that Python error coming up, but it should pop a little window over here on the right that just tells you the maximum, minimum number, total number of records, and what have you. So it's one quick way you can usually get to find the maximum, minimum numbers or the average of the values contained in here. But I was saying we wanted to do a search by expression. So I want to select features by expression. And in fact, instead of doing it by expression, we're going to do this another way. We're going to do this by a filter instead. We'll select features by value instead. And so I want to find all features where the computer percentage is less than, so 80 will be my number I type in here, and I will say less than. If I select features, see in the background there's all of my counties that are less than, and they got the box around them because I'm still in editing mode. Also, the education percent, I want it to be we'll put 80 for now and see what happens. Okay, my computer's lagging. It's not taking my clicks as I put them in. There it comes. Okay, it tells me that there's 6 that match. So, okay, education percent, we're at 80. Let's see what happens if we go to 75. So 6. Computers. Okay, we're giving more. So what I'm showing here is you can actually, when you have multiple fields now, you can start to use this select feature by value and start to put the values in that you want, and it has to match both criteria in order for it to select out those counties. And then of course you go and you could export these out, or if you wanted to, once counties are selected and you're back in your table, you could add a new field, and the new field could be a yes or a no. And your calculator, when you go and do a calculation, it will only do the calculation on the fields that are selected. Okay, it'll give you that option in here when you work through it. To only update 46 of the selected features, and I can make a new field. And I'm going to say it's equal to yes. And it's a string. You hit OK. It's gonna. I'm not gonna put it in because I don't want to mess this file up. It's gonna make a new column for you, and it'll have a yes or a yes in it in this case. Okay. So it's no way of adding data based upon saving your output criteria. Okay. That was a join. I took you down a few of the roads there, but the main point of that was that's how you do a join, and if you have to and you end up having a field that's in the wrong file type or it's a string instead of the format that you need, you can use the builder to go and build a new column and actually force it to convert from a string into integer or a decimal number. Questions on that before we move to the last one of the last pieces? Okay, so let's, I'm gonna unselect my counties. And what I'm gonna do is I know coming up here, I want a map that just shows me the counties with no fill in them. So I'm gonna show you how you make that. You right click on your layer, go to properties, and graduate it. I just wanna go back to my simple single symbol. And let's say I did this and I hit apply, they'd all be solid color. You have an option here when you do a single symbol and a simple fill. Okay, here's all I was in fill until you go down to the sub item to it for simple fill. The first item that you have has a choice of how you do things. For example, a starburst. Okay, we don't want that. There is a place to actually use starbursts dealing with water, but not here. Looks like a puffed pillow. Let's go to this one that says outline, simple line. And I think that looks good. We'll hit apply. And there we just have an outline of the counties instead with nothing for a fill color inside of it. So again, I just went single symbol. For fill, I chose simple line. And for the first item, I chose outline as a simple line. We're going to bring in here a bunch of point data and work with that for the last half hour. And this is going to relate to crashed data. So to show you what we're doing. So I pulled out a whole bunch of crashed data out of the state of Iowa's Iowa DOT crash analysis tool. And so this is their tool, and you're welcome to go visit if you want. But they have data that goes back 10 years. So 2010 has been recorded to 20. And these are all the red dots are all the 2020 data, and the gray dots are all the rest of the data. And just the default way their screen looks. You can change it so you only see this year's data. But this is an online mapping system that has a GIS in the back end. And I want to extract data out of this. And right now you can see already there's 18,341 crashes reported this year. But I'm gonna go I want to get the 2019 data. So I said select 2010. I meant to say select 2019 on this. So we select 2019 as our year, and then a condition where the driver was under the influence. So I should mention I'm in the advanced settings when I did this. You get a choice for condition. And when you get the condition choice, a menu will pop up here and you can tell if you want driving under the influence. So my condition is set for driving under the influence, and these are all the crashes in 2019, that happened. I can then go, there's this table icon you see right here, I start to highlight. You click that table icon, and you expand it out, it will show you all of the row by row data for each of those crashes. And you want to hit and tell it that you want to customize this data if you can. So let me go to the next slide. And so when you customize or select the columns of data that you want, you can turn on and off whichever boxes here that you like to look at. It includes some additional ones too that you can't see here, but or some default ones are always on. And then after you have selected the columns that you want, I do recommend that you review your data quite closely. You'll see that there's some odd things in this data set. There's some driver age. They're 5-year bins, so they tell you what they're between. You'd have to interpret that a bit into another column of information, but the labels are pretty good. However, there's some individual driver ages. Man, 200 years old. I can't believe he's out there driving still with a license. Evidently, they code anything that they don't have an age for as a 200. That's good because it means I have a value. And it's also good, means it's easy for me to exclude in my analysis. Had they left it null, it would have been tougher to work with. So you have to look for stuff like this in your data set. So that brings us to, I've downloaded that data set, and now we have a map that looks like this, where we want to map those points on the, or locations on the map. And you're going to be tempted to go over, if you've done any other GIS in the past, and do this processing toolbar and find things like join by attribute location and what have you. Don't do that. There's a much, much easier way. In fact, that's not even the exact right tool to use for it, even though it looks like it should be. Much easier way to do this. So what I'm going to have you do is, instead of dragging and dropping the crash CSV data layer onto your map, we're going to go use the layer menu, go to add layer, and you're going to pick add delimited text layer. So everybody go and do that, and the window will pop up, and I'll get to that window in a minute, but everybody should be able to go do this. Layer, add delimited text layer. Also, there is a link here, this GIS tutorials webpage. They have a really great overview and tutorial. Since we don't have data camp for this class, I do recommend checking out gistutorials.com. I'll show you the link again at the end. They've got a ton of tutorials, and you can go there and work through some of those, and they will be really helpful to you, especially if you know the specific tasks that you want to do. All right, so after you've brought that table in, you should have had a window like this. And I'm going to jump over to the same thing now, and I'll show what we do in that table, but this is where we should have got. So I am back in QGIS currently, and I told you I wanted to go to layer, and I want to add layer, and I want to add a delimited text layer. Just realizing I haven't done this in Ravani yet, so crossing my fingers. I'm going to go over and do a file name. Gotta go get my data. And I'm looking for the crash under the influence. Again, it says 2010. But it doesn't matter. So, open. And I get this window. There's the data. It knows it's a CSV. You're going to have to expand open this geometry definition. Now, one thing I didn't tell you, I need to go back to my slides and show you. In this data set, when I was looking at here, notice it tells me the coordinates are in UTM NAD 83 zone 15. So they told me in their header what format these numbers are in. These are not latitude longitudes. These are a coordinate system based on meters, based out of somewhere in Kansas. This is the one used in Iowa, and X and Y values in meters. Important to know because that's what I've got to enter into the system when I import this data. So let me get the same spot, and I'm back now again in live in QGIS. Geometry definition is open. X coordinates are set here. So for the X field, I told it that I want the X coordinate. the Y field, you want the Y coordinate, okay? Yours might have been empty when you went to it. System might have been smart enough to figure it out, but I can't guarantee that, so you might have to set that yourself. Also know that sometimes you'll get data that's instead of being in latitude, longitude, degrees, minutes, and seconds, or sorry, excuse me, instead of being in decimal degrees, it'll be in degrees, minutes, and seconds. If you get a data set that's like that, you do have to check this box to tell it that you're degrees, minutes, and seconds. It's one of those little things that trips people up. The geometry, CRS, okay, thinks it's not right. Excuse me. I think I'm gonna try and leave it off. I'm gonna see what happens here. This is acting a little bit different than my other one did, but X, Y, geometry. We might have to go over here and tell it that we want UTM. And so if I type in filter UTM 15 north, I can go through this list. NAT A3 UTM 15 north. I can hit OK. That's what we want there. Again, I'll do it again for you. I went to the filter up here and just typed in UTM space 15N. And it gave me a small list down here. Again, a small list, and you can find it fairly quick. NAD 83, UTM 15 north. We're gonna add our data. Good news is we see points behind it, and hit close. All right, so we're actually working in two different geographic projections right now. Our map is in one projection for the state or the counties, but the points were in UTM. So that's why we had to do that, told how to do that translation on the fly for us. But here are all the points for all the crashes. And the one thing I want to do with this, again, you could query this and do everything else we've done because the data is brought in. You can look at the attribute tables. You could do your queries or what have you. We could do a query and find just the crashes that happened on Thursdays and work with that. Or you could find out just the crashes. They've included the county that they're in. Deepak, I see your note. I'm gonna have to go back to it just because I got only a few minutes to finish this piece up. Excuse me. So in here, there's a county field. And yes, I mean, I can see when I sort it that there's however many in Adair County, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, okay? Going and counting that up would be a lot of work, especially if I brought in all 10 years worth of data. I don't think I want to count up all of the county results. And so for that, we can do a spatial join. And a spatial join will make, it will join two objects together. And we have different things that we can do with it. But one of them is we can tell it to go and count how many of one feature appear inside the other feature. And that's what we'll do. And to do this, again, the system's operating really slowly. There it goes. Someone's got their mic on. If you can check that, please. Okay. What we want to do is turn on your processing panel if it's not on. And you can turn on your processing panel going over to processing toolbox. So processing toolbox, if you don't have it turned on, it'll be right here. There's a ton of stuff inside this processing toolbox. And I'm just going to open some here and show you that there's all kinds of tools that you can do. And we have hardly even added any filters or plugins to this. When you add plugins, a lot more things get added. Now, I know where the one's at that I want to use, but to help you find it, what I'd recommend you go do is type the word join in as your search. So everyone can please do that. So Deepak, I'm thinking on your ad, it's probably because those two fields have to be selected for the XY, and then the next projection button down has to have a projection set for UTM 15 North. Otherwise it won't, they'll say it can't add it. You have to have that third piece typed in. Otherwise you can't hit the OK button to add that data. Yep, good. Okay, so everyone's got this processing. Turn this on. I did a search for a join. Funny, these are in different order than they are on my computer, but the one we're interested in is join attributes by location summary. Make sure you grab the one that's a summary. In the ArcGIS world, the tools combined into one tool. For here, for some reason, it's split into two, but that's fine. I want you to double click it. It's going to open up a new dialog. And hopefully we won't do this backwards. We want to switch the first one. We want to be Iowa counties. And we want to join the crash data. We're interested in the counties where things intersect. Note intersect versus contains or overlaps. If you were to discard your records that could not be joined, just know that you would lose this county right here. Sorry, you won't lose it, it just won't get drawn because technically this accident is in this other county. So there's one county that's got no accidents, but don't check that. A weird thing I want to see if it happens here in this interface is that, I'll make this bigger so you can see the whole thing. There it comes. I had to slide over in order to get to my ellipse here. We want to click this, and you want to just use case number. It doesn't matter which one you pick. Just hit case number for now because it's unique. It needs to be a unique value, and case number is unique. Hit OK. For some reason on my desktop machine, when I do this, it hides and puts this dialog behind my QGIS interface. And I have to take my box, my interface, slide it over, and there behind it is my join attribute by location dialog, okay? So if all of a sudden it disappeared when you did that, slide your one dialog over and look. Looks like it did right here for us, but I want you to be aware of that. Kent, what I did is I went in. Oh, the system is really slow right now. There you go. Got a bigger window. I went to the fields to summarize. I selected the case number because I know the case number is a unique value. If I chose day of the week, there's many crashes that happened on a Saturday, so it wouldn't be going to use. So case number is a unique value. All right, and then we want to summary it, but we want to summarize it by account. So for the summaries to calculate, some really cool stuff in here, but we just want count. So just check the count field. Hit OK. And that should about do it for us. We can hit run. And it's going to make a, and then you can hit close. It's going to make a new map called joined layer. So I'm going to turn off my Iowa counties. I'm going to take my crash data. I'm going to drag it up on top of the other one so we can still see the crash data. But joined layer is what it made. See the little icon here to the right of it? It's like a little computer chip. It means it's a temporary scratch layer only. If you wanted to save this layer that you just created, you have to do a right click and tell it to export it or make permanent. Okay, otherwise it's just stored in memory temporarily. But what I'm interested in is I want to look at its attribute table. And in the attribute table, it looks the same at the beginning as it did before. But way at the end, it's got this number count field. And this is actually a case number count, but it's this is my crash data. And you could rename this and stuff, but these are my crashes per county. So if I wanted to go and symbolize my map based on this, and go to properties again, we can do a graduated. Our value is going to be called case count. Like I said, you can go edit column names in this program. You can't in ArcGIS for some reason on shapefiles, but you can in here. We go to our case count is what I want, just because I haven't used different colors today. Use that instead. Classify, we're going to have it be pretty breaks. We're going to apply it. Hit OK. And it's pretty much what you would expect. I'll turn my crash off. No, I missed my county because the way I symbolized it, turn that county off. But that's fine. You'd expect that in the most populated counties, there would be more crashes. And that's what this just told us. I mean, just confirm for us that that's what happened. Really, if you're going to do this, you would still want to get your count per county. And then you do a field calculator on another field. And maybe if you had your total population, you could get a crashes per capita field. And then you could map and display your data based upon that value instead of doing it on a raw count. But sometimes the raw counts are good too, because in this case, I mean, we know that there's just a bunch of alcohol-related crashes happening in this one county, okay? And over here and over here. So one of our teams is looking at recovery and no one's looking at alcohol and to figure out where they might need to do some intervention. And even having a per capita thing, well, that map is nice. If you only have 3,000 people in your county, which one of these counties in southwestern Iowa does, you could have a really high per capita crash rate, but it only involved maybe 15, 20 people. Whereas how many people does it take to have that per capita rate in Polk County in terms of you think of how many people might attend a session that you're having. So best way to figure out distance between bars and crashes, what you could do is if you have the bars located, you could, well, again, you don't know what bar they came from or where they were at. They could have been at home, whatever. But if you're wanting to do a test to see, are there more crashes within the vicinity of a certain bar or set of bars? What I would do is I would make buffers. First, I'd locate each bar on a map like these points are. I would then create a buffer around the map or around the bar. So a small circle, maybe you go out 1 mile. And when you go out 1 mile, then that's a polygon. That polygon is no different than the polygons that represent the counties. You could do a count in each one of those polygons. The polygon does have the name of the bar as part of it. And you could find out which bars have the most crashes happening near them. Now, if you were looking at true distance, you can also do as a crow flies, there are some distance network things that you could look at. But there's a lot of assumptions you've already gone into because you've assumed there's two on different ends of the block, but more crashes happen within 1 mile of one. That's the one everybody's going to versus the one down the block just a little bit further. I mean, it's kind of hard to make that justification. We had this conversation earlier today too about alcohol sold or consumed. We really don't always have a good sense of how much alcohol is consumed, but we have an idea of how much is sold in each county. We're making an assumption that alcohol that has been sold has been consumed. Could also be sitting on the shelf. We don't know, but it's been sold and the retailer no longer has it. So you got to be careful of some of these things that you would do. Okay, I have one last thing to go over with you in the last 8 minutes, and I think we can do that here. What I need to have you do is, let's go ahead and we can do this fairly quick. I could show you this, and then we'll lead into this buffering and intersecting next time more. I'm gonna go make a new project. I'm not gonna save this one. I'm gonna add into my new map a state. Oh, I know what I do. I want to add in vacation states again. All right, and then I want to go and zoom into. If you want, you can just watch along on this last part. That'd be fine. I'm gonna zoom into here. I'm gonna get my properties set again. Let me do it a little different. Let me think. Let's do it this way. Okay, that should be. Okay, that'll work for me. So those are all the states. And then what I want to do is I have this other boundary on my GeoJSON here. I'll make a new one of these. Let's say I have this route that I have created. And I guess I actually have it already created. So let me go grab it here. Into my local data. So I'd already saved this route. So I just copied and pasted it in here, so I don't have to redraw it again. So I have this route. I drew it in GeoJSON. I have it as a text file. What I want to do is I want to get this data in to my Ravana. One thing I can do is I can go over into my File Explorer and I can tell it that I want to make a new file in here. And that's what I did. I made a new file called vacation route. And so when you make a new file, I'll make a second one of these so you can see it. I'm going to call it VR2. Okay. And it should make it for me. Uh-oh, it's not working. Oh, real quick. I made, so new file. Look this way. Now that's falling asleep on us. So at any rate, I had made one new one and I copied and pasted into it. And I made this vacation route.geojson file based upon the data from geojson.io. And so what I'm going to do is I want to add that layer onto my map. So we'll layer, add layer. I need to add a vector layer. Open it. And we'll add it. Because you can kind of see that route map is added right here. Make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. Oops, no one offset it. Okay, so there's that route. The only reason that looks thick right now is I gave it a large stroke so you can see what I have here. What I want to do is I want to do an intersect, and I want to find all the count or states that this line intersects with. So in your geometry tools, up here, you gotta look through them again. But you can do a research tools, select by location. And I want to select features from my vacation states that intersect my vacation route. Right, so I have two of them. That's all I'm trying to find is which ones intersect. I can hit run and see how it's going to select all of the states that I'm driving through. So this is a geoprocess. Being able to do stuff like this is called geoprocessing. And anytime you're intersecting or doing overlays or overlaps, merging of data, you're doing geoprocessing. So that was one way we could do this. It's kind of cool. Another thing I can do here in the last minute or two with you is I want to show you something called a buffer. I know it's going to have a weird result because some stuff I tested earlier, but buffering is the most common, one of the most common tools that you can use. And so if I double click buffer, I want to buffer my vacation route. The units are degrees. I wish it said miles or meters, but I have to go back and change a setting to have it do that. But I'm going to make it just be 1 degree. And I'm going to hit run. And you see how I made that line thicker? That's a buffer of 1 degree, but let's say it would have been 50 miles or something. Now that I have that as my buffer, it makes a new data layer. I can go back to vector analysis, research tools, select by location. And this time I'm going to select features again from my states that needs to compare to my buffered. Word intersect is all I need. If I hit run, this time it got a lot more states, which means those states are within that buffer of the path I was on. Okay, so that's another form of geoprocessing. We'll do a little bit of that next week. So that brings us to 159. I got my last slides here to show you, and we're done. We did that stuff. We even got that in, and we're at wrap up. So for next week, one thing I need to have you do is I need to have you go to the OpenStreetMap website. And in the top right corner, you can sign up for an account. And so I'll put that here for you. If you guys are getting signed up for that account, I think we have a fun exercise. It's actually going to be doing some public good with it. We're going to be mapping some sidewalks, streets, and buildings, and what have you in Jefferson, Iowa, and adding to their map. And it's a really neat way to engage people in doing open street mapping and producing data that we can then later go back and grab and bring into things like QGIS. Okay, so please go ahead and do that. And I think that's all I had for you, except these links and stuff will be available. Here's the link again, URL link to this PowerPoint. And so that's available here for everybody too. So that's it. If you got questions, you can email me. If we need to set up a certain time and have some office hours, we can. Thomas is also available to help with some of that. So just let us know. And everybody have a good rest of the day. I'll hang out here for a minute or two if anybody's got any questions.